in the presence of those assembled here and in full realization of the high calling I assume as Executive President in the service of the Republic of South Africa, I, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, do hereby swear to be faithful to the Republic of South Africa and do solemnly and sincerely promise at all times to promote that which will advance and to oppose all that may harm the Republic, to obey, observe, uphold and maintain the Constitution and all other laws of the Republic, to discharge my duties with all my strength and talent to the best of my knowledge and ability, and true to the dictates of my conscience, do to justice to all, and to devote myself to the well-being of the Republic and all its citizens.
Yeah, it was a day that filled us all with an incredible sense of pride. It was 23 years ago, May 10, on this day, of course, Nelson Mandela was inaugurated as the first democratically elected president of South Africa.
Every South African that I met on that day smiled from ear to ear, whether black, white, green, blue, you name it. Yeah. We were a united nation.
We were a united nation then, for sure. It was one of our greatest days on this day. Of course, today, well, we're looking at the anti-money laundering, or the FICA bill, and we'll talk at length about that. Of course, President Jacob Zuma signed this bill, which allows increased scrutiny on the bank accounts of prominent individuals, identify and deal with money laundering, terrorism and other illegal activities.
All illegal activities will be scrutinized through these bank accounts, and that is a way forward. Now, we're asking you the question on the poll today because that's very important. Do you think that the new bill, the FICA bill, will curb financial crime? Now, so far we have 94 votes in. 44% of you are saying yes. 56% of you, which is very disturbing, says no, it won't curb.
Yeah, people are, of course, South Africans are quite cynical and a little bit skeptical, one would think. But you guys are tweeting us on this question already. Let's see what you are saying.
Lachasa says, no, not easy. This country is full of mafias.
Alex Motapo says this country is corrupt. Well, that's what the FICA bill aims to attack.
And that it is exactly what it is all about. It established that basis in order to make sure that we do not have these financial outflows. This one from Demiso says the only way financial crimes may ever be stopped was if there was no money. Well, how do you work with no money? That's another question.
It's talking about the end of capitalism. We're going to have to do the barter system again. Anyhow, we're also asking you a question because the police minister has come out, Elvis, and he's made what some call on social media a very controversial statement, saying that our protests in South Africa have been hijacked by criminals.
And that is exactly what it is. So if you look at the liquor stores being raided there in your picture there, and of course some of the protest action that we've seen in El Dorado Park, Anadale, as well as in Coligny. So we're asking you, do you agree with the police minister that criminal elements have hijacked South Africa's protest?
Yeah, the tweets that you guys are sending. He said, this one from Queen Bee says, yes, there's definitely a criminal element.
This one says, embed this slideshow. We'll come back to some of your comments as soon as we can get them up and running, and we'll read them to you as we speak. But you can let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page.
Well, we've got lots happening, lots of protests around the country. Obviously, let's get into our work.
Talking about protests, Anadale residents are reported to have started blocking roads as protests continue in that area. Coligny residents and government will meet in order to find solutions to the racial tensions in that area. And the search for the last of 5 lions that escaped from Kruger National resumes today. Now, let's first find out what's happening on the sports field with Kendall Makamate.
Thank you very much, Elvis. Good morning to you, and a hearty good morning to everybody at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
In the title of the Club Super Sports United, the other one now. There's an opportunity here for another goal. Aquina's missed one, and he's unselfishly bites Parla, and that's it. Done and dusted.
A resurgent Super Sports United and Cape Town City's challenge for the title with a resounding 4-2 victory.
But Sally's on the move in there. Subasic gets 2 gloves to it. Danny Elvez crashes the ball in. That will do it for Juventus once and for all.
Danny Alves stars again as he inspires a brilliant Juventus to book their tickets to the UEFA Champions League final in Cardiff with a dominant 4-1 victory over AS Monaco. And Real Madrid travel to the Vicente Calderon with a 3-goal advantage as they make a bid to become the first team to ever defend the UEFA Champions League title. All this and more later on in the Sports Bulletin. For now, it's back to Elvis for the news.
Now we talk about violence that continued in Eldorado Park and Anadale. For the latest on the ground, our reporter Griselda Lewis now joins us live from Finetown, a few blocks away from Anadale. A very good morning to you, Griselda. Can you tell us about the situation on the ground there right now?
Well, Elvis, you know, the situation is extremely tense here in Finetown, just a few blocks away from the Anadale township where violence had broken out yesterday. What's taking place here right now is that we're just trying to get our camera ready because police had just fired some tear gas just a few moments ago. And if we can point towards that direction, Mangoba, you can see the community running away from police who continue to fire rubber bullets and stun grenades as well, and tear gas. Quite a number of people, community members, are choking here next to me. Now, the situation and the demands that are being made by the community here in Finetown are very similar to what we've been seeing during the course of this week in Eldorado Park as well as Anadale, where residents are saying they're demanding housing and service delivery, and are saying several of the demands that have been made in this area, they've been waiting for promises to be delivered on. They say since 2014 there are community members and some of the community leaders as well have been in ongoing talks with the councillors in this area, but nothing has happened. The scenes that you're seeing at the moment are of residents who are saying they are not going to back down until someone comes and listens to their demands. Now, a bit earlier on this morning, we were in Anadale. Recall we'd been broadcasting there yesterday for the better half of the day, and the situation in Anadale quite calm this morning. What we do know is that several shops were looted in Anadale overnight, and there's quite a strong police presence in the area. And Finetown, where we are at the moment, is just a couple of kilometers away from Anadale, and this community is saying now they're also in protest, in solidarity with all the other communities that are saying they want service delivery and some housing as well. There's also quite a strong police presence here this morning. You see some of the community members continue to fling stones at the police. They're saying the police must move away from this area. This road here as well in front of me has been blockaded with stones as well as strewn with burning tires as well. I'm going to bring in now the community leader as we stay on those visuals there. I will chat to community leader Nkosana Masego. Nkosana, let's chat to you about your demands. You're one of the community leaders here in Finetown. What are the demands that you are making at this point as we stay on those visuals there? We stay on those visuals there. You see the community itself. I'll chat to Nkosana as we remain on those visuals. Talk to us about the demands that you're making as a community.
Don't want anything. With all due respect, what we want, we ask our leader, Paul Mashatile, MEC, to come with the concrete plan of the land that we can occupy it, because that's what we want. We don't want to politicize the thing of the land. Even though we've got a different political organization, we are not here as the different political organization. We are gathered here today because we need a land. If they can show us the land, and then it's the way we can stay. We are tired of renting. We are tired of staying. Our child are growing up with our mother. So we want our own place. database, because they've made a lot of promises of the land, but of which then they tell us about the database. When you look at the database, then plenty of the people that are in the database from 2014, 2015 are people from Soweto, not the people, the resident of Finetown. That's what we want, with all due respect.
Are you saying that you've been on the list for many years, but now the houses that have been allocated in this area or stands have been given to people from other communities?
Definitely sure, because there is a lot of corruption from our leader also. Because our leader are also selling the stand, after having the stand, after having the resident, they're also selling it again to another people. They're making money for themselves, of which, like when we get the resident, we want to forget, with all due respect, we're going to ask our MEC to forget about the database that of 2015, because the resident of here, they need a place. He must take the people who are staying here. Then that's it. We want, and what up until he comes, because the problem that we had with our councillor, with MMC, then we got the different answers, and at the end of the day we end up fighting ourselves because of them. So we are tired of their stories. With all due respect, we plead our premier Mashatile to come and give us the concrete thing.
Okay, Nkosana Maseko, I'm just going to let you go for a few minutes and just walk you through this area here. Mangoba, if we could just move towards this area, you'll see towards here more police are being put in, trying to move to various areas in and around here, Finetown, and some of the bystanders from just across the road where I'm standing right now is on the Golden Highway. And what I do know is that a few people have been injured and are receiving a bit of some care not too far from where I am at the moment. While cars are able to slightly move here on the Golden Highway, you can see the remnants of some of the tires that were burst this morning, and these residents are saying they're going to continue with their action until someone comes and listens to their demands. What we do understand as well is that we're yet to confirm, though, that Herman Mashaba, the mayor, is expected in Anadale at 6 o'clock this evening. We're yet to confirm that. We're hearing rumors of that at this point, but we'll certainly
Well, unfortunately, we do apologize for that sound quality there. That was our reporter, Griselda Lewis, coming to us live from Finetown, just a few blocks away from Anadale. So as you can see, it is still happening there, and we'll keep you updated on the situation there. Currently, we understand it's quite quiet in El Dorado Park. But this is why we're asking you this question today. In relation to the protest that's happening, do you agree with the police minister that criminal elements have hijacked South Africa's protest? Eben, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's interesting. If we look at those pictures, maybe we can take some of those pictures live. If we look at the pictures that are incoming from where Griselda is now, it's a lot of children throwing the stones.
And you ask yourself, are these the residents, really? Just the children that's not in school?
Yeah, it's a school day. It's supposed to be a normal school day, and these school children are not in school, which again brings the question of how do we deal with this problem in South Africa of using our children? But we're being tweeted on the question. Coligny Ngwekazi tweets us, he says, Newsroom, yes, there are few individuals who embark on protests with the intention of looting foreigners' shops. They take advantage of the situation, says Coligny.
This one from Alex Matapo says, that's true. We end up not knowing the protesters, they really mean what they are saying, or they are in need, or they need a method of stealing.
Harsh but true. Shafana says, yes, I agree with Mbalula. Some of the protesters, their aim is to break the shops and steal food there. Yes, the people are hungry, they say.
This one from Sitsaba says, yes, I agree with the minister 100%.
Yeah, that is a sentiment, of course, that seems to be permeating around the country of us. But there's also other news.
Other news, and that's we're staying with protest action. Of course, as you know, what's happening in Coligny. As you know, yesterday, for the latest there, what's happening in Coligny, we are joined by Oleboheng Kosilentswe in Coligny in the northwest. A very good morning to you, Lebo. We've seen what's happening currently in Anadale. There is protest there. Briefly tell us what's happening there in Coligny.
A very good morning to you, Elvis. I can tell you that the situation is calm here in Coligny this morning. We are standing at the R503 that was closed for traffic last night as we made our way back to Mahikeng. But for now, traffic is moving quite smoothly. There are no disruptions. I can tell you that last night, the representatives from the Premier's office came here to meet with the community to pave a way for a meeting that will take place again between the community and MEC for Public Safety, Dr. Mpho Tlhabane. You remember that meeting yesterday did not end well, with the community not wanting to hear anything that the MEC had to say with them. At the core of that meeting, the MEC was pleading with the community to allow school children to go back to school, seeing as how they've already lost a lot of school time, and that we are approaching exam season come next month. So we are standing by to find out if indeed this morning the community will be willing to listen to MEC Mpho Tlhabane. Elvis?
What about businesses in the area? Have they reopened after the protests that we've seen in the area, and of course some farmhouses being burned down?
The only business that we see operating this morning is the filling station that is on the R503 as you come from Lichtenburg into Coligny, or from Ventersdorp passing Coligny. So far, the local businesses are closed down. The tuck shops and ordinary just retailers have closed down because they fear that their businesses will be burnt as a result, because they are not black people. You remember that the community seems to be targeting any business or any house or any building belonging to a person that is not black. So whether or not they are Muslim, Indian, white, Afrikaner, their businesses are in danger. So those businesses for now remain closed. Elvis?
Let's just go back to the meeting of last night. What is the outcomes from that meeting, and is everything now normalized in Coligny?
Yesterday, the representative from the Premier's office that is concerned with dealing with the reconciliation, rehabilitation and healing program came here to Coligny to meet with the white community as well as the black community to really try and find a way in which they can sit and engage and find a way forward, and even beyond these protests, to find out if they are willing to live together in harmony and with tolerance. But the black community not willing at all, Elvis, to meet the people halfway. So the meeting did not end well, but we're expecting the government officials to be here, as they did mention that they were committed to finding a solution to the impasse here in Coligny. And so they will be coming here every single day to really try and deal with the situation. We also understand that Premier Supramahuma Pelu will come here on Friday with a task team to really now get to the core of the issues and to try and help the situation here in Coligny.
Now, Lebo, I do understand that the protest was all about the bail that was granted to the two white men that killed a young boy. But are there perhaps underlying racial tensions within Coligny that also needs to be addressed?
Certainly, Elvis. Speaking to Premier Supramahuma Pelu at the funeral service of Mahlomola Mosweu, he did mention that there are quite a lot of underlying racial issues here in Coligny. You remember that Coligny is mainly surrounded by farms, and those farms are owned by white people. And you find that black people are laborers on those farms. You find that most of the black people are really poor and destitute. So every now and then you find situations where children, such in the case of Mahlomola, will go and try find food, try find sunflower or anything that they can eat. So the provincial secretary rather of the ANC, Dakota Lekgoto, also mentioned that there are racial issues here in Coligny, but also said we should not forget that that democracy is still new, and that the legacy of apartheid is really going to take a long way to heal, and that South Africa is going to take a long way to reconcile. So other than this protest, other than the community protesting against the granting of the bail for Peter Doornrout as well as Philip Schutte, there are a lot of racial undertones and a lot of racial tension here in Coligny. But we've seen, I must mention that we've seen a lot of white members of the white community coming to us, the media, and speaking to us, telling us that they are willing to find a way in which they can live and work together with the black people here in Coligny. It's just that they fear victimization. They cannot be seen to be speaking to us because they fear the victimization, and that unfortunately the black community is not willing to hear or listen to anything that anybody has to say, Elvis. So that is a very difficult situation that the people living in Coligny find themselves at the moment. Elvis?
Thank you so much for giving us that update there. Thank you much for your time. That's our reporter, Leboheng Tsholienso in Coligny. Of course, we'll keep you updated on that story as it unfolds there. Now, a story that was bothering a lot of people in Mpumalanga. The search for the last of the 5 lions that escaped from the Kruger National Park is expected to resume this morning at and near a sugarcane plantation in Komati Port, near the Labombo border post in Mpumalanga. As you know, 5 lions were spotted on Monday roaming around in the farm area. Rangers from the Kruger National Park and the Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency managed to capture 4 lions and return them to the Kruger National Park, and they were sleeping tightly last night in the park. However, the search for the last lion was temporarily suspended at dusk. Residents have been urged to contact the nearest police station if they do spot a lion. We'll keep you abreast of that story as well, but that's why we're conducting a poll today, because we're looking at the broader impact of the FICA bill and what it does mean for South Africa and for consumers. Will the new FICA bill curb financial crime? That is the hashtags you see there: money laundering, financial crimes, FICA, SABC News, as well as financial freedom and finances. 113 votes are in today, and I can tell you 53 of all South Africans and people on the continent are saying no. The FICA bill will not curb financial crime. 47% of you are saying yes. Let's find out if that is really the case from some of our guests that we've invited this morning. It's over to Eben to start that conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Elvis. Very good morning to you. Wherever you are, if you've just joined us, of course, illicit financial flows, that's a problem not just in South Africa, but the country has now taken steps to stop the illicit flow of money. To achieve this, South Africa had to implement a law. It's known as the Financial Intelligence Centre Act. That's number 38 of 2001, otherwise known as the FICA bill. Now, President Jacob Zuma signed the bill into law last month, and the Banking Association of South Africa, PASA, says it's relieved that the president has finally signed the FICA bill into law. From the Banking Association of South Africa, we are joined by Coligny Mate, who is the Senior General Manager of the Financial Inclusion Division. A very good morning to you, Coligny. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, Eben, and good morning to your viewers.
Now, of course, we've been asking the viewers, and the viewers, they say they don't think this bill is going to, well, the majority of them, they say they don't think this bill is going to stop corruption, illicit financial flows, and so forth. As PASA, how do you respond to what the pessimism, let's call it that South Africans are sharing with us?
Well, I don't think it's pessimism. I think we all have a responsibility to inform South Africans about what the intentions of the bill are. Firstly, let's start from the beginning. We have had this law, as you said in your intro, for many years now. It's a 2001 Act that was merely being amended to strengthen the provisions in the Act to make sure that we indeed curb money laundering and the financing of terrorism. So, people have been for the past 12 years or so subjected to what is called FICA requirements when they go to open bank accounts, which require that they should provide proof of identification, proof of income, and where they live, so that banks have a sense of who are we dealing with here. In the event that something suspicious happens when there is, say, a deposit or movement of money in an account that is inconsistent with the disclosed sources of income of that individual, they would then be flagged as potential cases that need to be reported to the Financial Intelligence Center.
Now, of course, the bill also looks at things like terrorism financing and all these kinds of, call it financial crimes. Financial crime in general in South Africa. Have we reached a crisis point with regards to financial crimes? And I'm talking about in business and elsewhere.
So in the context of this legislation, the importance of it is that we, or the banking system in South Africa, is part of the global banking system. So the need for us to be in line with what other banks elsewhere in the world are doing was so that we do not find ourselves being regarded as a non-compliant jurisdiction, which would then be cut out of the financial system and the banking system of the world and not be able to operate. So it's not because we've suddenly reached crisis points in terms of financial crime in South Africa. And this is not to suggest that we don't have problems with financial crimes.
Now, the President has signed the bill. One of his objections was warrantless searches. How was this resolved, and how does this apply to the private citizens in South Africa?
So you know that there were hearings in Parliament hosted by the Standing Committee on Finance earlier this year to look specifically into the issues that the President had raised in referring the bill back. And because it was such a technical issue, Parliament, the National Treasury, BASA and other institutions got involved, very senior counsel, to really look and scrutinize the issues and see whether in fact the concerns raised by the President were valid. They came to the conclusion that by and large, the bill would pass a constitutional muster. They tweaked it a bit just to make sure that whatever concerns were there, we make explicit what would have been sort of explicit provisions in the bill. And so the President felt confident to sign it into law.
Some groups have come out and they've been, well, critical. Critical is maybe a little bit harsh. The Progressive Professionals Forum, they've come out and said they support it, the aim of combating crime, if I can just, but they wanted to ensure, and they say that the rights of their members were not discarded rather. How do you read these objections?
Well, I would have to say that they have a right to object if they feel that something is untoward about the bill. But we're very confident that it's gone through a very thorough process, including this reconsideration of the bill after the referral back by the President. So we would say to anybody who is concerned about this bill that it does indeed observe all the protections that are in our Constitution, protecting the rights of citizens and the rights of bank customers.
Now, if this bill wasn't signed by the due date, which was, of course, in June, or coming in June, what would the implications have been if it wasn't signed?
So in the first instance, I think it's important to just appreciate a point that is not always made clear, and that is that South Africa has one of the best banking systems in the world. We're ranked second. So we are much better than many of the developed countries' banking systems. Now, this is because we have the right regulatory framework in place, and the regulators are keeping us true to those frameworks. We are properly capitalized and so on. If this bill had not been signed into law, it would have meant that as a banking system, South Africa would not be compliant with some of the regulations that are put in place that are observed by everybody in the world. Overnight, we would have lost this status of being a really good banking system. We would have been cut out of the global banking system. We wouldn't be able to transact with the rest of the world. The correspondent banking relationships that we have with other banks in other jurisdictions would potentially be jeopardized.
Is it not unfair then to focus on let's call it politically exposed persons or prominent influential people? Is it not unfair to focus on them a little bit then?
Well, I mean, globally, the sense is that this category of individuals are a lot more susceptible to the kinds of crimes that this piece of legislation is trying to curb. And this is why there is a far greater scrutiny of the activities of these individuals. But what the bill does do as well is that it introduces what I would call a differentiated regulatory system, where the bank accounts of, customers with low levels of income, where there is very limited sort of activity in those accounts, would be subject to a much lighter regulation. So in a sense, it's trying to make sure that there is no undue burden on poor and low-income customers, and while at the same time scrutinizing those who are much more exposed to these kinds of crime.
We hear about corruption in South Africa almost as it's a political problem. And it's not a political problem. Right now, before the Competition Commission, we've got 133 cases across all of our sectors in business of collusion, corruption and other practices. Yeah. How is this bill going to change the game, or the game with regards to corruption in business?
So the cases of competition are obviously regulated by competition law, and the laws have been also amended over time to really try and tighten the screws to make sure that nothing untoward is able to go through. So this bill is not dealing with issues of competition. There's a separate piece of legislation and that looks into that and looks after that.
Talk about the man in the street. Will they be able to sleep easier now? What's your message then to our viewers out there?
Our message is simply that the fact that we now have this bill signed into law by the President does mean that we continue to enjoy the banking benefits that we've had. In other words, we have a banking system that allows us to transact with the rest of the world, to do everything that we have taken so for granted. Countries that have been subject to these kinds of which have been blacklisted for failure to comply, have suddenly found that they were not able to have the banking services that we take so for granted. So we can be glad that we are going to have this banking system that is able to make our economy function, make life in South Africa continue as we have known it.
In conclusion, the implementation process, what does it look like over the weeks and months to come?
So the implementation process, as we understand, is that the Minister of Finance would have to get regulations approved by Cabinet so that then they put the implementation into effect. So the next thing is to make sure that the Minister does, in fact, get those regulations in place so that implementation can commence. But of course, the FICA bill, as we've had it since 2001, will continue to operate.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Coligny Mate is the General Manager of the Financial Inclusion Division at BASA. That's the Banking Association of South Africa. Once again, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Now we move on. Of course, there's a lot happening. Social media is abuzz with protests. We'll start with Anadale. Of course, you saw a little bit earlier. Remains tense there. Residents continued their clashes with police today. They are demanding decent housing, they say. Protesting residents blockaded roads and looted shops here. You can see some of the damage that have been caused. Of course, more protests have flared up elsewhere. We saw in Coligny, for instance, it's a little bit quiet there this morning following the two farmers accused of killing a young man there, Matlomola Mosweo. They both received bail. This led to renewed violence there, but this morning we can report that it's calm. Then in Richards Bay, protests also flared up at the harbour. Of course, this video, workers demanded a wage increase there, and protesters used bulldozers to flip over police cars and other vehicles. 16 Transnet employees are expected to appear in the Richards Bay Magistrate Court today for public violence and malicious damage to property. Court protest, that's the hashtag that you can look at and interact with. Of course, the one story that had everybody sit up and take notice has been the lion escape. The fourth lion that escaped from the Kruger Park has been found and captured. The fifth one is still on the loose, and if you're in the Kamati Put, the Bombo border post area, be aware that there might be a lion hiding in the bushes wherever you are. Some interesting news from a human point of view. Paleontologists have revealed more information about their most recent hominid discovery. Yes, hashtag hominid bones have now been dated to, between 226 and 335,000 years ago. Much younger than, well, other finds had predicted. It was predicted that, well, they might have lived only about 2 million years ago. Today also marks, as we pointed out, marks the 13th anniversary of South African music legend Brenda Fassie's passing. Of course, Mabr was adored by millions, filled up stadiums, and today her music still lives on with her legacy. The hashtag is Brenda Fassie, and we will never forget one of our greatest artists, and probably our greatest female artist. Some will say, of course, Miriam Makeba fans will disagree. Of course, our question of the day deals with the protests. Are we doing the poll? Well, we've been asking you about the poll, the FICA poll, that is. We just spoke to Coligny about this. He said, nothing to worry about. You guys are tweeting us. The majority, slight majority, are saying, no, it won't curb financial crime. Well, we hope that it's different. Zolise says the following. He says, FICA, we hope and trust. So at least now we have a regulation seeking to address what used to be a nightmare engulfing our country, says Mzolise. Sitsaba Kwepe says, Newsroom, no, corruption is born in South Africa, therefore FICA is a waste of time. You should look at elsewhere in the world. We don't do so badly on the corruption stats, to be honest. We're only, I think, in 42nd place in the world. It's not so bad. Bonakele says, as long as they loot and steal within government, I don't see the bill being implemented. Corruption has taken center stage in this country, says Bonakele. Concerning that, the sentiment is quite negative. Mahafa Noel Trump says, I think so. Simple, he says, I think so, I think it'll help. Ikonanatso says, they will easily escape it because they are corruption baptized with no conscience and dirty, he says. Well, say that about most criminals all around the world. Corruption is a problem everywhere in politics in the world, and also in business, as well as in our private lives. We shouldn't try and politicize it always. Let's take a look now at our picture of the day. This one comes from Out of Body, and it's captioned, of course, it's a little bit of light-hearted fun at the lion, and there you see, he says, Lion, listen up, it's going to be me and 4 my boys. Just make sure the gate is open. Talking about the lion escape. Nice picture, that one, of the lion. Behaving a little bit like a gangster there in that picture. If you had to ask me, it looks a bit, can't say what I think. Our comment of the day now. This one comes from Pilela 24, and he remembers Brenda Fassie, who says, when Mabr was asked if she's the Madonna of the township, she said, no, sweetie, Madonna is the Brenda Fassie of America. That's Mabr for you. Yes, world star she was. Let's take a look at around the courts quickly, all the cases of interest that will be heard today. We'll start in Limpopo, where the trial of a 36-year-old man arrested for allegedly stabbing to death an accused person in the dock at the Napuno Magistrates Court outside of Tsenin is expected to start in the High Court in Polokwane. Isaac Mafofori allegedly stabbed Hendrik Shai to death at the Magistrates Court while he was moving out of the dock to contact his lawyer, who was not present. Then, still in Limpopo, 8 people arrested for alleged public violence and damage to property. They are expected to appear in the Vuwani Magistrates Court outside Thoyando. They allegedly smashed windows of vehicles, including 3 belonging to the SABC, no less, last weekend. They were angry after President Jacob Zuma failed to address them on the Vuwani demarcation issue, as was expected. Down in the Eastern Cape, a farmer in Utenay is expected to appear in the local magistrate's court in connection with the shooting of 11 cows on his farm last week. The 37-year-old suspect was arrested after the carcasses of 8 of the cows were found on the farm in the Kreis-Rivier area. 3 cows survived, but 1 was reportedly euthanized a little bit later. The suspect faces charges of contravention of the Animal Protection Act and illegally discharging of a firearm. Then, back here in Johannesburg, the water polo coach arrested for allegedly sexually abusing more than 20 learners at the Parktown Boys High School is expected to appear in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court today. The suspect was nabbed after surveillance footage allegedly caught him fondling a 15-year-old boy. Now he's facing charges of sexual assault as well as rape. Interesting one, we'll keep you updated. A lot of interest around that story. Time for us now to take a short commercial break. You're watching Newsroom here. We're talking about, illicit financial flows, the FICA bill, and other issues with regards to money. Don't go away.
President Jacob Zuma says that the country's security agencies will seek new and more effective ways to fight crime.
Crime, as you would appreciate, depends on the circumstances. This narrative that South Africans are xenophobic, we don't necessarily agree with it.
This group of Bangladeshi shop owners ooze frustration. They've lost everything.
I'm like totally destroyed. I can't see what I'll do, where I'll go.
Rescue workers are still searching for the body of a 5-year-old boy who fell into an old mine shaft near Boksburg in Ekurhuleni.
Tensions remain high, with thousands of community members refusing to clear the scene until the boy is found.
The Financial Intelligence Center Amendment Act, or FICA, and other related acts signed by the President Jacob Zuma, aims to combat money laundering and the financing of terrorism. The presidency says the president is satisfied that the act addresses the constitutional concerns he had raised about warrantless searches. Now, Corruption Watch is a non-profit civil society organization, and they made submissions twice in Parliament on the FICA bill, focusing initially on the lack of clarity around the definition of the beneficial ownership and the definition of domestic and foreign prominent influential persons. Corruption Watch's objectives is to fight the rising tide of corruption that we see in the country and the abuse of public funds in South Africa. They want to promote transparency and accountability to protect the beneficiaries of public goods and services. The head of Legal and Investigations Department at Corruption Watch, Leanne Govinsamy, now joins us in studio to talk to us about this. A very good morning to Leanne and welcome.
Thank you.
First and foremost, I would like to get your reaction as Corruption Watch to the signing of the bill finally by the President, Jacob Zuma.
Look, we were very glad that the bill was finally signed, into law. But, we had expressed our concerns about the delays around the signing just a week before he had signed, because we as a country are really cutting it fine in terms of meeting certain international obligations. So we had expressed our concerns. And even though the bill has been signed into law, there's still certain processes that must be followed in order to implement the provisions, to bring it into force. And, we are having another kind of review of the meeting of our obligations, these international obligations, and we're not sure that, those implementation mechanisms are necessarily going to be in place by then. But look, we are optimistic, we are glad that it was finally signed.
The cutoff date is June. So the President has signed. So what must happen now between now and June before that cutoff date?
Look, it's about implementation, right? It's about looking at whether there are any regulations that must support the legislation. There were certain technical requirements or obligations that were imposed by the law. And it's really about looking at technically and practically how is it going to be brought into force. And I'm sure that at the time at which the review is done, those questions will be raised with the National Treasury around, have we done everything that we can to ensure that we meet their deadline?
The Progressive Professionals Forum, they are still objecting to this bill, and they are asking for the Finance Minister to delay the implementation of the bill, and if they don't succeed there, they're going to go to the Constitutional Court. What do you make of that, and is that perhaps the spanner in the wheel that you don't want?
Look, the objections by the PPF and other entities have really been around the definitions around influential persons, that this may somehow have an effect on maybe big business or those who are in government, who do business with the government. But if you go back to when the bill was originally drafted and the memorandum or to the objectives of the bill, one of the primary objectives was to try and address the kind of unintended consequences for people doing business with the state or ordinary people who may have been affected by FICA. So if somehow your bank account was flagged by the intelligence center or flagged by the bank to the intelligence centers being suspicious, potentially your bank account could be closed or frozen, etc. It was because the net was so wide that it was maybe catching people that it really shouldn't have been catching. And so the objectives of the now revised bill is to say, let us have a more focused approach to who we regard as being suspicious, or transactions that we regard as suspicious, or who we regard as being suspicious, so as to prevent that from happening. And I think that's what has been lost in this dialogue around FICA, because in as much as there's implications for those high-level businessmen or people in government that are regarded as influential persons, it then also prevents the ordinary people who are doing business from having unintended consequences for themselves.
So politically exposed persons and political influential persons are also being focused on in this particular bill.
Yes, it's because...
Isn't that a bit unfair on black business, specifically who is linked to government?
Look, the objective is to look at those who pose a risk, right? It's not saying that everyone who is in this position, right, is regarded as a risk right off the bat. It's saying we're taking a now risk-based approach to understanding what could potentially be suspicious transactions. That risk-based approach means looking at those who do have access to power or access to money in a particular way. And it really is an approach that the banks will be using in order to filter out those who could potentially engage in suspicious transactions. It's not necessarily saying all of those individuals are engaging in suspicious transactions. And if you really think about it, right, this is a standard of a best practice that is being used around the world. It's not something that South Africa is necessarily, or Treasury or any of the entities have come about and said, this is something we want to do of our own volition. It's an international best practice that is designed to ensure that we reduce money laundering, reduce financial crime, and really catch those individuals who are engaging in these practices.
The President was concerned about warrantless searches. That has been resolved. How has it been resolved for him to actually sign the bill?
Look, in the submissions that we made before Parliament, we said that this really wasn't an issue because the legislation itself provided for enough safeguards against abuse of these warrantless searches. And that's essentially what, the committee, the Finance Committee, Standing Committee on Finance had finally decided, is that in fact there are enough safeguards. They amended the legislation slightly, but there are enough safeguards, and there were enough safeguards to ensure that there's not abuse of warrantless searches. You have to understand the circumstances under which some of these inspectors are going into businesses or companies in order to conduct these searches. Some information could be easily destroyed, and so there's a rationale for not necessarily having this a warrant available at that time. But again, it's the last measure, right? And so there's different. There's a graded approach to how you conduct these searches.
Now we're asking our viewers today the question around the FICA bill. Can it stop financial crimes? Your thoughts on that?
Look, it introduces mechanisms and new approaches that will enable banking institutions and other institutions that deal with, clients, governmental clients or big business. It enables them to be able to detect suspicious transactions better. And that is what we think will enable the FIC ultimately to be able to address financial crime. It introduces a definition of beneficial ownership for the first time, and that's a huge step for South Africa to move forward in identifying the real owners of businesses, of companies that are maybe engaging in money laundering, tax evasion, trying to deal with where the proceeds of crime are going to, how are they moving through the system, how are they leaving our country. So yes, we think that this will definitely help us to address it better.
Leanna, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
It's a pleasure.
That was Corruption Watch's Head of Legal and Investigations Department, Leanne Govinsamy. And that is why we're asking you this question on our poll today. Of course, we want you to participate in that poll. We want to find out from you, do you think the FICA bill will curb financial outflows and crime? So here we got 113 votes in. Let's see if it has been updated. 53% are saying no, 47% are saying yes, you can still keep on tweeting. You've got 22 hours left, but you're also tweeting us on the poll this morning. Let's take a look. This one coming from Bonakela says, as long as they loot and steal within government, I don't see the bill being implemented. Corruption has taken a center stage in this country. As you know, the PPF is asking the finance minister to delay the implementation of the bill. We were supposed to speak to Mr. Jimmy Manye a little bit earlier, but he'll probably do it just after 10 o'clock. So you want to hear what the Progressive Forum is saying about this particular bill. Alex says that the country is corrupt. This one from Mzolisi says, some elements of this FICA will have the implications or automatically heal a series of social ills and corruption, fraud and prevention. This one from Pablo says, the crime syndicates will find loopholes and capitalize on them. So, for me, it may decrease financial crime. Mzolisi again comes back. He says, hashtag FICA. We hope and trust so at least now we have a regulation seeking to address and what used to be a nightmare engulfing our country, this illegal outflows that we've seen. And of course, we want to know from you, what do you make of all of this? And do you think that the FICA bill can really safeguard us from financial crimes? Some people's bank accounts might be frozen if they are suspected. Of course, there's the issue of politically exposed persons that the PPF is also very worried about. But we'll chat Manye, Zwanele Manye, a little bit later after 10 o'clock on this issue. But let's now take a look at the Facebook page today and see what we have there. As you know, residents of Anadale, south of Johannesburg, are reported to have started blocking roads in parts of the area. There are some of the pictures there, and you've seen some of the visuals a little bit earlier with our reporter, Griselda, in Anadale. Then, the trial of the Burkina Faso's former leader, Blaise Compaoré, and his cabinet began on Monday after delays, with the court dismissing calls from the defense to cancel the proceedings. And then finally, in South Korea's the new president there, Moon Jae-in, has been sworn in just a day after a landslide election victory, beginning his term in office facing multiple challenges from the aftermath of a huge corruption scandal to tensions with the North. Now you can find all these stories and more on our Facebook page and the SABC News website. Let's now take a look at the newspapers from around the globe and the front pages there. And we start off in the United Kingdom. The Guardian reports that Theresa May will face a battle within her own party, as well as with the energy companies, if she decides to go ahead with a cap on gas and electricity prices. Then, moving to Florida, the U.S., the Miami Herald says that after President Donald Trump unexpectedly fired the FBI Director James Comey yesterday, Florida Democrats in Congress, led by Senator Bill Nelson, called for an independent prosecutor or a commission to investigate the Russians meddling in last year's election. And then finally in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that Israel has begun building an upgraded security fence along two stretches of the Lebanese border after an unarmed Lebanese citizen infiltrated into the area and walked several kilometers to Kiryat Shoma. The Defense Ministry confirmed that yesterday. Those are all your newspapers from around the globe. But right now, let's go over to Eben and Kendall to talk some sports.
Yeah, Elvis, thank you very much. Of course, if you don't know, the draw for the 2019 Rugby World Cup in Japan happens this morning in Kyoto. It's made up of 20 teams allocated into 4 pools of 5 teams. 12 of them have already qualified by virtue of finishing in the top 3 of their pool at the 2015 World Cup. Now, Kendall is here. Kendall, it's a marquee day today for World Rugby, isn't it?
100%. It's a day that Springbok fans are holding their breath. Their collective breath is being held because people might know but might not know that this draw is broken up into 3 bands, and literally it's the top 4 teams, which South Africa is not one of.
No more.
Not anymore. And then after that, that makes up band 1. South Africa's in band 2, which actually is an ill omen for us.
Yeah, it's tough because I think we'd have to look at playing pool matches against the likes of France, Wales,
easily,
even Ireland possibly, which will be very, very difficult for us to get out of that.
Or
pool.
even New Zealand. We could actually end up having our first couple of matches against either New Zealand or in England or, like you said, Ireland, and it looks like it's going to be a tough one, similar to what Wales had, if you'll remember, in 2015. Even you've covered one or two Rugby World Cup draws.
Yeah, I've covered quite a few. It's it's always a whole hullabaloo, much ado about nothing. There's always only one group that's really tough, which is the group of death. We can only hope that South Africa's not drawn in there today, because let's be honest, we're battling for a little bit of form, aren't we?
Yeah, no, we definitely are. In fact, I mean, all around the world, I've been trying to read up on what's being said about this particular draw. And the one thing that keeps coming up is how South African rugby is in a mess. And this is being reported across the world. That's how they see where we are. And well, let's be honest, we don't see much better for ourselves right now.
Yeah, it's interesting to talk that we're in a mess if we look at the way that the game's being run, but also we're losing so many players. We're losing some of our young players now. It really is a red light flashing for
Very
Springbok
interesting
Rugby.
that you mentioned that, because what's come out this morning is World Rugby is looking at making the eligibility for test status not 3-year residence anymore, but making it 5-year residence. So making it a bit harder for people to change allegiance and move in and play for another country.
Well, that will certainly help South Africa's cause, because right now some of our best players, they can go and play overseas for a couple of years and then play for Ireland, as we see CJ Stander and the like. I mean, he's a world beater. He's playing for the Lions this year.
Yeah, it's quite crazy.
We can't lose the talent that we have. Kendall Mahamati will be back with us at 10:40 for a complete wrap. Of course, lots of interesting football last night and tonight. The biggest games of the year are in the offing right now. We'll be back with you at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock to give you a complete roundup and sport in the next hour. Don't miss that.
I came there and then wanted to sing with them, and then they said, no, you are too young to sing with us. Then I got angry that day. That's when the Dr. Malinga was born. I don't want to say poor, because of now we are not poor. That means God wanted to give us whatever He gave me today. Till I was featured by DJ Choice on the song called Casanova. Signed with Kalawa Jasmine via Orlando. Many songs. Then Dr. Malinga this, Dr. Malinga that. Then I was in.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jali. What has been happening on the digital front?
To win the CAF Championship was a huge thing, and perhaps we ought to have celebrated him even more.
Absolutely.
73% of our schools, regardless whether they're in the township or they're in urban areas, if you go to those schools, you are guaranteed a matric pass.
It is the one thing that we haven't done well as a country. We have thrown money at it. I mean, if you ask for figures, you'll be told we're spending well in education.
90 billion.
But the performance of the system has not been good enough.
I'm Alicia Jali, joining us live from our Johannesburg studios. A quick look now at your current news leaders. Parliament's Communications Committee has decided on 5 names to sit on the SABC's interim board. And the Constitutional Court has directed Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini and her department to account for their handling of the social grants contract.
And in tennis, Serena Williams has withdrawn from the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells and the Miami Open due to a left knee injury.
We're expecting it to move just in the towards the southern parts of the country, not so much coming towards southern Africa, not even touching the Mozambique channel. It's just going to move back towards the Indian Ocean.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday from 3 to 5:30 p.m.
This story is about what happens when we put our differences aside
and we come together as a human race.
Salt makes its way out of the kitchen into the art studio.
Normally, you know, salt is for food and stuff, but then here's salt.
Past couple of months, I've grown so much, and I'm just ready to impart what I've learned to the next Miss South Africa.
I wasn't expecting this. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm feeling so overwhelmed.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Welcome back, everybody. It's just gone 10 o'clock Central African time. That is, I'm with Kendall Mahamati this morning. Of course, Kendall, last night was a big night for South African football. Cape Town City.
Yeah, it's over.
Just flattered to deceive in the end.
Yeah, overs get overs. In fact, another team that seemed to flatter to deceive was SuperSport United. They seem to be on the downward spiral. They're resurgent, revive themselves, and kill Cape Town's chances.
Yeah, no, and John Comite is now saying he's going to shine Shabba, he's going to shine everyone in the country, and money's no object.
Oh, wow. Well, let's see what happens next year.
Crazy. Anyhow, today we're running a poll. If you've been watching for the first hour, of course, President Jacob Zuma has signed the anti-money laundering bill, FICA, which allows increased scrutiny of the bank accounts of prominent individuals, identify and deal with money laundering, terrorism financing, and other illegal activities. Kendall, are you surprised that South Africans don't? 122 votes are thinking, no, it's not going to help.
Not at all. I think there's a lot to be said about what happens in the South African mind. As you said earlier, a little earlier, South Africans are a little skeptical, they're a little jaded.
A little cynical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think they all believe that it's going to actually solve the financial crime in South Africa.
Yeah, a lot of our issues we create in our own mind. Sometimes I think we need to take a holiday from South Africa. I just had one. Works. Pablo tweets us. He says the crime syndicates will find loopholes and capitalize on them. So for me, it may decrease financial crime. And that would be a victory, wouldn't it be? Wouldn't it, Pablo?
And that's the whole point. Mzolisi says some elements of this speaker will have implications or automatically heal a series of social ills and corruption, and as well as fraud prevention.
Absolutely. It will happen almost automatically because illicit financial flows will be looked at. Moto Tokoyo says, no corruption is life in this country. FICA is just a waste of time. It's a pity that you are so cynical, Rosina.
Very South African, huh? Bonakele Kapito says, as long as they loot and steal within the government, I don't see the bill being implemented. Corruption has taken center stage in this country.
Yeah, that is for sure. Alex tweets us, he says, this country is corrupt. Why do you say that, Alex? Give us more. Anyhow, keep tweeting us, guys. We love your interactions. Today we also focus on the police minister's utterances. Pigile Mbululo says, violent protests in El Dorado Park, Anadale and Gauteng, plus in Coligny in the northwest are no longer genuine as they've been overrun by criminals. This is what he says. So this is the question that we've asked. You are viewers, Ken.
Yeah, we want to find out from you. Do you agree with the police minister that the criminal elements have hijacked South Africa's protests?
Absolutely. What do you think? Well, Bonakele thinks no. These are the results of high unemployment and poverty. If they can address it, we won't have people going around and protesting. But what about the stealing of other people's stuff?
Mzolisi said the government in particular, and particular SABC, must utilize these visuals to identify culprits from the so-called protests.
Yeah, Mzolisi wants harsh action from the police on the culprit. Sermon Skosana tweets us. He says, based on how protesters have been behaving, whereby shops are looted every time there's a protest, the answer to that is a very healthy yes, says Herman. Yes, he says.
Dipanzu says, with the history of South Africa, I'm not sure if South Africans know anything else, sadly.
Scary thought, that. Mzolisi comes back, he says, what's sadly gaining momentum in this country is residents disregarding the law to a country of lawlessness. Lives are at risk also. Yes, we see that every day. People getting hurt, people getting injured. There's a lot of news happening today, by the way. Let's get straight into our work, Kendall, with the headlines. Anadale residents have started blocking roads south of Johannesburg as protests there continued this morning. Coligny residents and government are to meet in order to find solutions to the racial tensions in the northwest town. Then the search for the last of the 5 lions that escaped from the Kruger National Park resumed this morning. Yeah, interesting story. They found 4 in the last 24 hours. Let's hope that they can get the last one in. Of course, it's in the Komati Pit area. But let's go over to Kendall for our sports.
Evan, thank you very much. Quite a lot happening in the world of sports and mostly football. But you know what? This is that time of the year. This is what's coming up in sports today.
Title of the Club Super Sports United, the other one now. There's an opportunity here for another goal. McQueen has missed one and he's unselfishly bypassed. And that's it. Done and dusted.
A resurgent SuperSport United end Cape Town City's challenge for the title with a resounding 4-2 victory.
But Sally's on the move in there. Supersic gets 2 gloves to it. Danny Alves crashes the ball in. That will do it for Juventus once and for all.
Danny Alves stars again as he inspires a brilliant Juventus to book their tickets to the UEFA Champions League final in Cardiff with a dominant 4-1 victory over AS Monaco. And Real Madrid travel to the Vicente Calderon with a 3-goal advantage. They make a bid to become the first team to ever defend the UEFA Champions League title. Not very easy to call it, but most people are talking about the Juve Real final in Cardiff. But more about that a little later in the sports. For now, it's back to Yeben, who's got the news.
Yeah, thanks, Kendall. I think Madrid will smash them tonight. Should be an interesting final in a couple of weeks' time. Of course, let's go back to our top story 9. Anadale, south of Johannesburg. Shop owners are now counting the cost following widespread looting in the area last night and some incidences this morning. Protesting residents blockaded roads and engaged in running battles with police this morning, demanding housing. Police are maintaining a high presence in the area. Residents have given Mayor Herman Mashaba a 2-week ultimatum in which to meet with them or face an escalation in the violence in the area. Now, last night, Mashaba sent representatives to the area to hold a meeting with residents who have started to block the roads in Anadale. These are live pictures. The violent protests have spread to the neighbouring township of Finetown and Lawley. You see these live pictures. The police continue the engagement. Let's go over to Crocella Lewis, who's right there.
Well, Eben, a very good morning to you. These are continuing running battles that you're seeing right now between the police that have been deployed here to Finetown and the residents as well. They've been hurling stones at police since very early this morning, and police have been retaliating. At least one person has been injured and has been taken to hospital for treatment. It's a very tense situation here this morning, as we have been reporting since this morning. The demands that this community is making is very similar to the demands that we've seen coming from the different communities in El Dorado Park as well as Anadale and what we're seeing in Laudium also happening this morning. So these residents are saying they're going to continue with their protest action. Essentially what police are trying to do with the visuals that you're seeing right now, they're trying to prevent the residents from moving onto the Golden Highway. At least for now, cars are able to move past that particular area, but the residents have been charging towards where I am now to the Golden Highway, so police continue to push them back. And as you correctly pointed out, not too far from where I am at the moment, the residents of Anadale have also been counting the costs this morning. Several of the shops in that area have been closed, and they're basically trying to see when they'll be able to open those shops once again. I'm going to move towards this direction. You see, that's where these stones are being flung at this point, and police keep on firing some tear gas towards the area where we are. We're on the side of the community at this stage, and standing here, it's a bit safer to stand on this point, but residents continue to fling these stones. It's been happening since 3 o'clock this morning, and no schooling is taking place in this area. What we did see this morning is that in the Anadale area, there were some pupils who did try to make their way to school, but when they got there, apparently the teachers had told them that they will not be opening for the day, and they might as well turn back and go back home. So it's not just a service delivery protest and demands over adequate housing, but it's also a situation that we're seeing. There's also a situation, I'm just going to move from here. I'm just going to move from this area as the police try to move in. More tear gas as well being fired as we try to get ourselves away. As we try to get away from this area. You see there are more rubber bullets. Tear gas and stun grenades. I beg your pardon there. We're obviously trying to... Yeah, but I'm not sure if you are trying to communicate there. Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about your own safety and the mood amongst the residents there. We've seen attacks on members of the media elsewhere.
Well, that's right. Since we saw these protests begin, Urban, from the different areas that we have been visiting, the media have also really come under attack. And, well, I guess some would say it is the nature of the job, but we've also been relying on police. I guess, if we run into one direction, you'll find that the community is running in the same direction, and police would basically fire those rubber bullets, even if there is media there. So it's not safe at all for us to be at this point. You see the journalist that is standing right there. Just to give you a sense of what has happened since these protests started, that journalist wearing a helmet right there. Those are the scenes that you're seeing. Often when we've covered service delivery protests, would generally just go in without any protection. But what has since happened, we've seen the escalation of these protests, becoming more violent. So it has really also, journalists have had to change the way that they do things. The helmets and the protective gear that most of them are also wearing at this point. You look towards that direction as well. Very similar scenes there. Our camera person, Mangoba, more helmets as well. One of the journalists there was also injured this morning. So the situation extremely tense here, continuing running battles. These residents are continuing to burn tires as well and blockading this road here near the Golden Highway. But we'll continue to bring you a whole lot more from here. At this stage, we understand that Mayor Herman Mashaba will be meeting with the Anadale community at 6 o'clock this afternoon, and perhaps then would get a sense of whether these protests will continue, because I would guess when he does address the Anadale community, he would address the broader spectrum of communities that are facing similar challenges, because all of them are related to housing, to service delivery, the alleged lack thereof, and underdevelopment. So certainly when the mayor does address the Anadale community, I think it would need to come up with solutions for the many other communities, including here in Finetown, where I am, to see how they'll be able to quell these service delivery protests, because they certainly do not seem like they're going to be letting up. There you have it again, more stones being thrown. It's basically exactly what's been taking place here this morning. But we'll try to remain as safe as we can at this point. One person injured. One was detained a bit earlier on, one of the community members, but was let go on warning as well.
Griselda, thank you very much for that update. We'll be back with Griselda a little bit later. She's doing great work there, isn't she? Right in the thick of it, amongst the tear gas and the buckshot, as it were, doing her job. Of course, you see other reporters with helmets on. I think we should invest in a helmet for Griselda, because she's right in the middle of it. Of course, we're dealing with quite a few issues around the country. In the northwest, the trouble-torn Coligny area was fraught with violence. Again, residents and police clashed late yesterday afternoon. I can report this morning, of course, it's been very quiet there. The locals are incensed over the court's decision to grant bail to two farmers accused of murdering a 16-year-old in the area. Of course, pleas by government to allow the law to run its course have fallen on deaf ears.
We need justice to be provided to the
A community on edge, agitated over a court decision that freed two farmers on bail. They allegedly killed a schoolboy by throwing him off a moving bakkie. The farmers dispute this, saying the child jumped. They had earlier apprehended him for allegedly stealing sunflowers. The community believes justice has not been served. Public Safety MEC Mpo Motlabane's words failed to make an impact. He met police, farmers, community and municipal leaders today and says the state will appeal the decision to grant bail.
Reconciliation, healing and renewal. It focuses on building relations that have cracked. It also tries to show people positivity and craft a way forward in a collective way as a community of Coligny. And we want to combat negative influence that is coming from outside into Coligny.
Community leaders also called for calm in the area.
I think this thing will really subside. We'll go back to normality. We'll keep addressing our people at different levels until they come to an understanding.
But shortly after the MEC's address, these scenes unfolded in Coligny. No damage to property or injuries were reported, but police remain on high alert. Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo is expected to visit the town on Friday. Nicolene Smallman, SABC News, Coligny.
Now we can confirm, of course, that, well, the area was quiet there this morning. Our Elvis spoke with our reporter Oleboheng Khotsilentwe and he asked her about the very latest there this morning.
I can tell you that the situation is calm here in Coligny this morning. We are standing at the R503 that was closed for traffic last night as we made our way back to Mahikeng. But for now, traffic is moving quite smoothly. There are no disruptions. I can tell you that last night, the representatives from the Premier's office came here to meet with the community to pave a way for a meeting that will take place again between the community and MEC for Public Safety, Dr. Mpo Motlabaane. You remember that meeting yesterday did not end well, with the community not wanting to hear anything that the MEC had to say with them. At the core of that meeting, the MEC was pleading with the community to allow school children to go back to school, seeing as how they've already lost a lot of school time and that we are approaching exam season come next month. So we are standing by to find out if indeed this morning the community will be willing to listen to MEC Mpo Motlabaane. Elvis?
What about businesses in the area? Have they reopened after the protests that we've seen in the area and, of course, some farmhouses being burned down?
The only business that we see operating this morning is the filling station that is on the R503 as you come from Lichtenburg into Coligny or from Ventersdorp passing Coligny. So far, the local businesses are closed down. The tuck shops and ordinary just retailers have closed down because they fear that their businesses will be burnt as a result because they are not black people. You remember that the community seems to be targeting any business or any house or any building belonging to a person that is not black. So whether or not they are Muslim, Indian, white, Afrikaner, their businesses are in danger. So those businesses for now remain closed. Elvis?
Let's just go back to the meeting of last night. What is the outcomes from that meeting, and is everything now normalized in Coligny?
Yesterday, the representative from the Premier's office that is concerned with dealing with the reconciliation, rehabilitation and healing program came here to Coligny to meet with the white community as well as the black community to really try and find a way in which they can sit and engage and find a way forward and even beyond these protests to find out if they are willing to live together in harmony and with tolerance. But the black community not willing at all, Elvis, to meet the people halfway. So the meeting did not end well, but we're expecting the government officials to be here, as they did mention that they were committed to finding a solution to the impasse here in Coligny. And so they will be coming here every single day to really try and deal with the situation. We also understand that Premier Supramahuma Pelu will come here on Friday with a task team to really now get to the core of the issues and to try and help the situation here in Coligny.
Meanwhile, Police Minister Fikile Mbalula says the police will not hesitate to arrest anyone who breaks the law.
That are taking place will not be a challenge to us. For whatever reason that people protest about, the biggest issue that becomes a security matter for us in terms of the police is the question of violent protest. We have been saying this over and over again to say that that is not an option for our people to basically, opt for violence in the protest. But it has become vividly clear now that it is not the real people who've got demands who are promoting violence and the criminality. It is the actual criminals. That's one. The actual criminals who take advantage of the protest and they loot the shops of the Pakistanis. They loot the shops in and around the township. They throw stones because to them it is heaven. Protest has become a harvest for those who want to promote criminality. But secondly, we are dealing with a huge problem of disengaged youth who respond to this violent protest and so on. In the midst of all of this, the message of the real protest is lost. For instance, now, in terms of El Dorado Park, who are the leaders which must come to the fore, and then we talk and we negotiate, people disappear. And there is all-round looting going around. And we'll still urge our people to say that don't join this violent protest because many people and innocent, especially children, are getting injured, either by the police power, to disrupt and break this, because kids respond to anything. They respond to anything. And most of the time they got caught. So we urge parents to basically ensure that kids are locked and are looked after whenever these protests are taking place. We will continue to maintain law and order. We'll never allow any point where people are running amok and at the same time just protest. And in the name of protest, promote violence. We'll never allow that. We're coming hard on those perpetrators of violence, including those criminals who are leading this violent protest. We know them, and we're right on their tracks in arresting them, because at the end, we end up arresting wrong people, and the people who are plotting these violent acts are being left out. Those who call for protest must take responsibility for the violent acts. We will leave the innocent masses. We go for the leaders of the protest because they are responsible for the acts of violence. They escape, they don't get harassed, they don't get shot at, they live large. And the innocent people are the ones who are getting arrested, are the ones who are getting shot by rubber bullets and all of that. The leaders of these protests are actually left, on their own. Our approach is going to change. We're going to focus on those who protest illegally, and those who lead this illegal protest will meet the wrath of the law.
Well, this, of course, was a recorded interview. But before we go on to our next story, which deals with the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, let's just look at the question that comes out of that and your tweets. Do you agree with the police minister that criminal elements have hijacked South Africa's protests? Well, what are your tweets? Let's have a look at what you guys are saying on this question that we are seeing. Jacob tweets us. He says, in these protests, there are elements of politics and criminality. It's the duty of the organisers to ensure protests are safe. He goes on, he says, organisers of protests should be liable to pay for any damages incurred during protests. They should ensure property is intact. Of course, that we also heard from the police minister, that they will target the ringleaders of these protests. Pastor Napier says, you have the right to protest, but not steal or loot, as we term it. We pray that this will end soon and amicable solutions be found. This one from Nakeri. Yes, service delivery now shops. Every service delivery protest now shops are looted, says Nakeri. Yes, it is all too familiar for all of us here in South Africa. This one from Katleho says, I agree. People in these protests have different mindsets, driven by hunger, criminalism, poverty, joblessness, playfulness, and thuggery. Even in some of these instances. Now, of course, we move on with the news. The search for the last of the 5 lions that escaped from the Kruger National Park is expected to resume this morning at and near a sugarcane plantation in Komatipoort near the Lebombo border post in Mpumalanga. 5 lions were spotted earlier this week roaming around a farm in that area. Rangers from the Kruger National Park and the Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency managed to capture 4 of the lions and return them to the Kruger National Park. However, the search for the last lion was temporarily suspended at dusk last night. Residents have been urged to contact the nearest police if they spot the lion. Now, 23 years ago today, Nelson Mandela was inaugurated as the first democratic president of South Africa. 2 weeks earlier, more than 22 million South Africans had turned out to cast the ballots in the country's first multiracial parliamentary elections. An overwhelming majority chose Mandela and the ANC to lead the country. In his inaugural address, Mandela, who spent 27 years of his life as a political prisoner, declared that the time had come for the healing of the wounds of the past. 23 years ago today. Now, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, is calling on more than 63,000 students who've received funding to sign loan agreements before the end of this month. Those who fail to do so could forfeit their loans completely. The funds are paid directly to the university or training college and cover academic, residence and other student costs. Now, to talk more about the issue, we are joined by Victor Rambao, NSFAS Head of Business Enablement. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Why is it so important for students to sign their loan agreements before the end of this month?
Well, firstly, it is important for students to know what they're getting themselves into. Because when you sign a loan agreement, you're acknowledging the debt. If you're getting a loan, if it's a bursary, you're also acknowledging the grant that you're receiving from the government. Now, students need to know how much are they getting for tuition, for accommodation, food and transport. And this is both for universities and TVET college students. That's the first thing. Secondly, as NSFAS, we cannot advance money when there's no one who has acknowledged that I am the recipient for this money. And this is a big challenge for us.
What happens if the agreements are not signed by students?
So, look, if you look at NSFAS as an entity, we're limited with regards to funds that we have. Now, students who are not signing, if they don't need that money, we can then direct it to those that need it.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to sign as we've given the deadline, we would like to redirect this money to students who are deserving.
And the deadline for the agreements?
The deadline we've scheduled the 31st of May, but I think it is important for us to give context as to why the deadline of the 31st of May. A student who will sign on who will receive a line and a left stop on the 29th of May, we're not expecting that student to sign on the 31st of May. The students that we're calling on to sign before the 31st of May, these are students who have received these loan agreements a month ago and some 2 months ago. So we're pleading to students to say 31st of May, if you're not acknowledging that you want these funds, we'll then need to move them to other students.
Students, they planned a march to your headquarters last week. Just tell us, did this march take place and what were the demands of the students?
Yes, the march took place. Critical to their demands were they wanted allowances paid directly to them. Secondly, they actually want this monies to be paid. And we're saying, there's a sequencing of events here. You sign the loan agreement, then we'll pay the loan. With regards to us paying the loan or the allowances directly to you, we do have a system that we've started to roll out. Certain universities are still receiving allowances on behalf of students, but where the system is actually working, we then pay directly to students. Lastly, as you would recall last year, the call for free education, and part of the submission in the memorandum is they would want free education.
Have you any experience of paying monies directly to students in the past, and how did that play out?
We've had experiences of paying money directly to students. There are those that are responsible enough to use money for what its intended purpose is, and there are those who receive money and use it for different purposes. But maybe let's start with those that use money for the right purpose. When we pay, students will go and buy textbooks, they will go and buy groceries where there's a need for them to buy groceries. Your teacher students and medical students who are expected to go and do training, they'll use transport money to go and do training. And there are those that are not responsible, where students will wait for parents who want to do shopping at shops like ShopRite Checkers and Pick and Pay and offer to pay with their vouchers in the exchange of cash. And immediately when that happens, they move and go to Tops and they buy alcohol. And we're saying, if you really deserve and you want this money to advance yourself from an education point of view, rather you use this money for its intended purpose.
Yeah, that is a genuine challenge. Just to give us an idea, how many students have you covered in this year as NSFAS?
So this year as NSFAS, we're looking at funding 465,000 students. It's an improvement.
465,000.
Yes, it's an improvement from last year. We were sitting at 408,000.
How many students do we have on all our campuses? Is it 600,000 or is it
No,
more?
it's more than that.
Much more than that.
I'm only referring to NSFAS funded students.
Yeah. We always have extensions in South Africa with any deadlines, it seems. If there are those that fall outside of this, will we see extensions after the deadline?
From where we're sitting, we don't want to extend the deadline. But we need to acknowledge there are different cases which we'll need to look at the merit of the case, and you need to engage on those to the detail where both parties will be satisfied. But we don't want to leave that as the norm and say, look, there will be an extension. Because critical to this is those 63,000 students, if you don't need that funding, we can give it to other 63,000 students. And that's the call that we're making.
I want to talk about forfeiting loans. Those that will be forfeiting loans, who are they?
So if you have not signed your loan agreement, which is money that currently is waiting for you to sign so that we can pay the university for textbooks, we give it to you, accommodation and also food. If you don't sign, you will forfeit that loan. We'll then redirect it to others.
Well, Victor, I wish you well in this process. Thank you for coming in today. Victor Mbao is NSFAS's Head of Business Enablement. Of course, we're talking about the deadline for students to sign their loan agreements. And that deadline, of course, is, the end of this month. It is. And only special cases will there be, arrangements made. We'll take a short commercial break. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. We'll be back with you shortly. Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom. Now, Herman Mashaba, the mayor of Johannesburg, recently revealed his plans to alleviate the province's pothole problem by awarding 88 million rand to address the pothole repair backlog all across the city. The Johannesburg Road Agency has also launched a new mobile app called Find and Fix to allow citizens to quickly and easily report road-related defects like potholes, missing manhole covers, defective traffic signals in an effort to enhance service delivery. Now, this is according to Christelle Coleman. She's the Chief Executive Officer of Europe Assistance South Africa, who says that potholes causes major frustration amongst motorists as they can cause severe damage to a vehicle when it hits a pothole, and the driver can be left stranded next to the road due to tyre punctures, rim impairments or damaged wheel alignment or suspension problems. She's with us in studio to talk about this. Very good morning to you, Christelle.
Good morning, Evan.
Why do potholes cause South Africans such big headaches?
Well, first of all, let's just say, great work on the City of Joburg for trying to do something about this. It's a national problem. Potholes don't pick a province or a person. It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately something that can go wrong when you expect it least. So on a dark road, you're busy driving at high speed and you hit a pothole and you can really get into some serious trouble. Having said that, it's also not a uniquely South African problem. So we've got quite moderate weather conditions. In the US, for instance, with ice, they have huge problems with potholes and trying to upkeep it. So it's a universal problem and something that we have to tackle together.
We used to have a system where you could claim from the city if you damaged your car. Do we still have it? Are we going to escalate that?
It's still going. You can go to your local municipal offices and submit your claim. It's obviously quite a tedious process.
Yeah.
If you claim against your insurance policy, which you can't always do because if there's just damage to the tires, you can't claim on your motor policy. It's easier, but then it affects how much you pay on your premium. So your premium will go up because you've had a claim.
Yeah.
So it really would be good. It's the best suggestion is to go and claim from the various cities and recover that money and wait for it to come through. But the most important thing is expect it to happen. This is something that faces all of us. So make sure that you've got your emergency assist numbers on your phone. The worst thing, this actually happened to a friend of mine a while ago. She hit a pothole, both tires blew out on a dark road. And then you phone your emergency assist services straight away, your insurance company or your motor manufacturer assist services provider or your bank assist services provider. You have it everywhere, and you get them to come and help you. Don't get out of the car and try and fix the wheel yourself.
Yeah.
We don't have to do that. Sit safe and make sure that you get sorted out as soon as possible.
Do South African consumers take this seriously enough?
I think we do. I think all of us represent the consumers. There's a massive pothole just outside Hyde Park Corner, and it's been there for 6 weeks, and I just don't understand why it hasn't been fixed. So that's just why this Find and Fix application is also so important.
Yeah.
We have a collective responsibility to tackle this problem. It's not just the city's responsibility. So if you drive past a pothole, report it so that the next guy doesn't get into a problem.
Is it going to be as simple as that, the Find and Fix? You see a pothole, you could put an address to it, and you send it via your phone?
Well, 88 million doesn't sound like a lot of money, does it?
No,
to fix
it's
this
not.
problem. So I think it still goes into sort of a list of priorities, and then they decide where it goes first. So I think just at the end of the day, it's important that we do what we can do. And reporting potholes, reporting potential problems like open manholes, at least you take a step towards doing the right thing.
As the industry, how do you view the problem of potholes in South Africa, or are we at times a little bit hysterical about the little things?
Well, if you read up, you see that we're actually not as bad as the rest of the world. The Joburg city area, they say about 48% of the roads is classified as poor condition. New York's over 60%. So I think if we compare ourselves, but they've got the weather conditions. As an industry, it is a major problem because it causes accidents, it causes motor claims, it drives up the premiums, and also, most importantly, I think, it puts our clients into very dangerous positions at times when we can't always get to them on time and sort of save them from that situation. So it really is something that needs constant attention, it needs to be funded, and it needs projects like this to alleviate the pressure.
Now, you said 88 million is very little. What would be ideal?
They quoted a number of, 1.4 billion just to get the roads in the Joburg area up to standard. An interesting statistic that I saw was in the US, if you don't spend $1 on fixing a problem, 5 years later it costs $7 to fix that same problem.
So there's a 700% increase.
Whatever, in escalation, sevenfold escalation, and I'm sure it's the same in South Africa. Tarmac costs, it's a universal problem. So really we need to get to a place where we have constant programs in place where the roads are maintained. I work between Cape Town and Joburg. I live in Cape Town, I work in Joburg, so I commute. Cape Town, the guys are a little bit more proactive. So if there's a pothole, I always say the pothole ferries, at 4 o'clock tonight, tomorrow morning it's been attended to. So Joburg's obviously getting to that place where they're more proactive and they fix the problem when it's still small, unless it becomes this big problem and where cars disappear into holes.
What's the biggest problem in a city like Johannesburg? Is it potholes or is it or is it traffic lights being out, for instance?
Are you asking me as a person or as an industry representative?
As an industry representative.
I would say, the traffic lights really do get to me, but I would
get
say,
to everybody.
Yes, I would say from an industry perspective, from a motor claims perspective, the condition of the roads together with those measures that are supposed to help us not get into accidents, those are all equal in importance. They have to work, otherwise we end up in dangerous positions and accidents and loss of lives.
In conclusion, what's your advice then to motorists with regards to emergency roadside assistance services and the other things that people need to know with regards to this?
Most important, don't be lazy. Be proactive. Make sure that you've got the numbers and you've got it saved on your phone. Expect something to go wrong. We live in South Africa, it's going to happen. And then also make sure that you understand what covers you have in terms of your motor insurance policy, that you're adequately covered, that you read the policy and that you pay the premium, so that when something does go wrong, you can get yourself out of that problem. And then finally, be a responsible citizen, report potholes and work with the cities so that we can improve the condition of the roads.
Well, I'm definitely going to get this mobile app. Yes, it's called Find and Fix is the mobile app. If you're a Joburg resident, go get this app called Find and Fix, and we can all contribute to alleviating the problem of potholes on our road, because it causes all of us a whole lot of consternation. Christelle Coleman, thank you very much for joining us. Christelle is the CEO of Europe Assistance South Africa. Of course, we're talking about the city of Joburg's plan. Well, they've thrown 88 million rand at alleviating the pothole problem. But if you look at the rest of the world, we're not so bad. South Africans, sometimes we look only at our small little world and we don't look at the bigger picture. Sometimes our problems are not as bad as we think. Anyhow, we're going to take a little commercial break right now. Sport after the break.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jali. What has been happening on the digital front?
To win the CAF Championship was a huge thing, and perhaps we ought to have celebrated him even more.
Absolutely.
73% of our schools, regardless whether they're in the township or they're in urban areas, if you go to those schools, you are guaranteed a matric pass.
It is the one thing that we haven't done well as a country. We have thrown money at it. I mean, if you ask for figures, you'll be told we're spending well in education.
90 billion.
But the performance of the system has not been good enough.
Welcome back. My name is Kendall Makamate and I've got your sports right here on Newsroom. Now, before I bring you what we've got for you in terms of the PSL, just to let you know, in a little short while, I'll be letting you know that at the Rugby World Cup draw that happened a few minutes ago in Kyoto, we now know who South Africa is going to be playing in their group. But more about that in a few minutes' time. First up, SuperSport United beat Cape Town City 4-2 in an absolute premiership match at the Lucas Moripe Stadium in Pretoria last night. The win took Matsatsantsa to the 4th spot after denting the Citizens' title's hopes, and the latter remained 3rd. That's 5 points behind log leaders Bidvest. The match got off to a good start as SuperSport winger Thuso Phala forced a save out of the keeper. They were punished minutes later after failing to clear at the back. Matsatsantsa piled on the pressure and City's defence, and it finally paid off on the half-hour mark. The home side took a deserved lead minutes after the restart. The Citizens were awarded a penalty after Shonolo Major was fouled and Lebogang Manyama levelled from the spot kick, becoming the league's top goal scorer on 13 goals. Now Jeremy Brokey made it 3-2 to SuperSport, and Phala scored in stoppage time to seal a 4-2 win for SuperSport United.
Yeah, that was always going to happen when you push numbers forward to get the equalizer. Then obviously you leave yourself exposed. Mokoena showing maturity above his age. He could have gone for goal. He looked up and he saw that man Phala, who has had an unbelievable game tonight. And to crown it all, Thuso Phala has scored the 4th goal.
Now the title race is really going to the wire, and Cape Town City have fallen off the wagon, as you saw from last night. Let's have a look at tonight's fixtures. 4-2 win for SuperSport last night, but tonight Mamelodi Sundowns will have Baroka FC, who are relegation threatened, and a must win for Baroka if they want to stay in the PSL. If they want to stay in the PSL, it's a must win for Baroka. And Free State Stars, they'll be playing Bidvest, who also wanted to extend their lead at the top of the log. Bloem Celtic, they welcome Orlando Pirates, and Orlando Pirates will be looking for a win against Celtic against their hoodoo team. If you remember, Maritzburg United play Platinum Star. Now staying with football news, but going further afield, going to Europe, Juventus defender Dani Alves produced an inspired display, capped by a stunning volleyed goal in a 2-1 win over Monaco that took the Italians into their 2nd Champions League final in 3 years.
Bernardo Silva, now João Moutinho, and the shot was on. It's Coligny who came out to block it, Mbappe across, and Mbappe hits the post and the flag is up. Dybala. Higuain. Through to Mandzukic, what a save, Subasic. What a save. Marquisio down the middle, Higuain is over on the right. Here's Dybala. Dani Alves. Great ball from Dani Alves, super save again, but the follow-up's in from Mandzukic. Juventus are nearly there. But Sally's on the move in there. Subasic gets 2 gloves to it. Dani Alves! Crashes the ball in. That will do it for Juventus once and for all. No coming back from this for Monaco. Might be an opportunity now, and they have scored. Mbappe has turned it in from point-blank range. Juventus have completed the job. The first finalists in the Champions League in 2017.
Now, Juventus, who ran out 4-1 aggregate winners, will face either Real Madrid or Atletico Madrid, who meet in the other semi-final tonight. The final is in Cardiff on the 3rd of June. Now, soccer's world governing body, FIFA, has replaced the leadership of its ethics committee on the eve of its annual congress in Manama, Bahrain. Judge Hans-Joachim Eckert and Chief Investigator Conor Borbely will not be reappointed, and when their 4-year term expires at the end of this week. Now, the pair had overseen the expulsion of several senior soccer officials, including former FIFA President Sepp Blatter, Secretary General Jerome Valk, and UEFA head Michel Platini. But UEFA has proposed that Greek judge Basilios Skouris and Colombian investigator Hans-Joachim Rojas take over the reins. They must be confirmed by the body's Congress of Member Federations tomorrow. Eckert and Borbely criticized FIFA's decision, which they described as clearly politically motivated. Now news just in, the draw for the 2019 Rugby World Cup in Japan has been completed in Kyoto, Japan. And here it is. As you can see, Pool A, Pool B, Pool C, Pool D, and South Africa in Pool B with New Zealand, along with Italy, Africa 1 and repechage winners. There are qualifiers that will get played to make up the rest of the numbers. The interesting thing is in Pool B, if South Africa plays New Zealand here, they don't get to play them until later on in the knockout stages, which is the only advantage of drawing New Zealand. Pool A, Ireland, Scotland, Japan, as well as our qualifiers Pool C, which really is a pool of death by my account. England, France, Argentina, and then in Pool D, Australia, Wales, and Georgia. Moving on to tennis, Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic open their accounts at the Madrid Open today. Four-time champion Nadal faces off against Italy's Fabio Fognini, while Djokovic is up against Nicolas Almagro, Spain, who's already match-tested, having already seen off Tommy Robredo. Meanwhile, world number 1 Andy Murray progressed to the third round of the Open with a straight-set victory over Romanian Marius Copil.
Murray has always had mixed results on clay. He reached the final in Madrid last year, losing to Djokovic, and took the title in 2015, but has so far had a mixed clay court season. The 29-year-old Briton, who had a first-round bye, won his encounter against Copil in straight sets of 6-4 and 6-3. Murray was not at his best early on, but broke the world number 104 at 5-4 to take the first set and pounced again at 3-2 in the second. From then on in, it was a solid performance from Murray against a potentially dangerous opponent as he prepares for the French Open, which starts on May the 28th. The Briton looked far more focused in the second set as he wrapped up victory in 1 hour 23 minutes with just 9 unforced errors and without facing a breakpoint. He will now face Croat Borna Koric or Frenchman Pierre-Hugues Hebert in the last 16. Meanwhile, Murray's conqueror in Barcelona last month and potential quarter-final opponent Dominic Thiem eased past American Jared Donaldson 6-3 and 6-4. Fresh from finishing run-up to Rafael Nadal in Barcelona, the 23-year-old had little trouble in getting off to a winning start against Donaldson. He lost just 7 games en route to a last 16 meeting with either Grigor Dimitrov or Ivo Karlovic. Tabiso Sitole, SABC News.
And so it is that international sporting events can be held in South Africa again. The 4th report of the Eminent Persons Group on Transformation in Sport in South Africa has been released. Veli Basson, delivering the report in the presence of the new Minister of Sport and Recreation, Thulas Nxesi, acknowledged improvements in 3 of the 5 leading national sporting codes, namely rugby, cricket and netball.
A sigh of relief for the 3 federations. The ban on bidding to host international tournaments has been lifted. But the Ministry and the EPG will be monitoring the progress or lack of in the coming years.
Rugby, cricket and netball, we congratulate you on your greatly improved barometer scores. You clearly were willing to walk an extra mile. The right of this federation to bid for and host international tournaments in the Republic, as was imposed before, is immediately reinstated.
Athletics South Africa scored less than 50% on the mandate it set for 2015-2016. Nxesi is worried about the lack of strengthening of skill pipelines in football and athletics at school level.
Of particular concern is the paucity of the data in relation to the club and school athletics, the very bedrock of our sports system, and essential to ensuring sustainability of the code over the long run and at the highest level. If the triumphs of Rio are to be sustained, this must be addressed. In the same vein, football. The professional sport is well resourced. Amateur clubs, local football associations are doing well. And yet the findings indicate that your presence in schools is wanting.
The report paints a gloomy picture on those who sit at SASCOC board. Only 28% are people of color.
You can't, at this time in South Africa, this day and age, elect a board which is majority white, but also It's a reflection of those federations, of their representatives into the bigger council, which does the elections. So it doesn't just start up there. It also starts with the very federations themselves.
4 other federations signed a binding agreement with the ministry in terms of transformation. And these are table tennis, swimming, volleyball and tennis.
We obviously acknowledge that we have some challenges from a transformation perspective, but the new Tennis South Africa, that I call it, that's really come about in the last few months, is very, very committed to transformation, because we see transformation as a real opportunity to grow the sports of tennis in this country across all communities. So watch the space. We're going to be doing some exciting things over the next year or two in the transformation space.
Federations are encouraged to abide by the mandates they set themselves. Mtutuzi Ndlovu, SABC News, Pretoria.
As you can see, Richard Glover, the Tennis South Africa CEO, talking about new and exciting things that they'll be doing in this space. We'll be chatting to him in about 2 weeks' time just to get a catch-up with him and what's happening with both the men's and women's teams, as well as the juniors leading up into those. That's where we'll leave it for the sport. I'll be back in the next hour with a whole lot more. For now, it's over to Philip Hawkins, who's got the weather.
Yeah, thank you very much. And a very good morning. Let's take a look at what's going on in terms of your weather. We start off with Southern Africa here. We're seeing isolated showers forecast for the region. Really, most of it's forecast just isolated showers and extending through South Africa's central interior parts of the southeastern coastline. Other than that, just partly cloudy to mostly clear skies through most of Southern Africa. We're going to see a lot of sunshine in these areas, most of which starting out the day already very sunny and growing into a little bit of a cloudy afternoon. But as we said, mostly clear for most of these areas. Some rainfall forecast along the western coastline there of Namibia as well as Angola. But as we move on into tomorrow, that should recede up north into Angola's far northwestern regions there. The rainfall though in South Africa. Now this is where it starts to make a difference. A low pressure system and a cold front passing by the southern coastline. That's going to bring in stronger rainfall towards that southern and southeastern coastline of South Africa there. And it's going to bring in some very, very cold temperatures as well behind it in areas such as Cape Town, all the way moving across towards the George region there. That of course is going to progress over the next few days as well through South Africa's central regions, its east, and of course that's going to bring in some very, very cold conditions as we move through into the weekend. So that's something to consider as well. Let's take a look in a little bit more detail what's happening in your city today. Pretoria peaks at 26 degrees, no rainfall at all, just a bit of cloud cover forecast this afternoon. Durban 28, temperatures in Cape Town peak at 19 degrees, and of course some rainfall forecast extending all the way from PE to Uppington. Now, warm conditions do prevail as we look towards the northern parts here of Southern Africa. Harare is at 25 degrees, Victoria Falls 29, Nampula 27. Most of these areas you can see displayed at the moment are indeed sunny. But as we said, they're going to grow into a little bit of cloud cover this afternoon, and most of which is going to be mid to higher level. So really shouldn't affect your day too badly. Still a lot of sunshine to be seen despite the mostly clear forecast. Moroni's at 32 degrees for today. We're expecting showers at least throughout Moroni, Victoria, Port Louis, as well as Antananarivo. It's going to be a fairly mild day there, and Antananarivo, the 23 degree high forecast for the area. 27 degrees in Lusaka, 28 in Lilongwe. Temperatures do rise high despite some rainfall in Bangui. They're 34 degrees Celsius. It's going to be a fairly pleasant one. Kigali and Mombasa at 25 and 30 degrees respectively. And those are expecting some showers as well. Moving north now, we're going to see some of that rainfall, just very, very light rainfall and isolated showers extending through the southern coastline of West Africa, as well as towards Somalia, towards Ethiopia. But as we said, these are very, very isolated showers moving past. Those are just some low-level cloud cover moving past and just drizzling on some of these areas here. So don't expect too much rainfall around that far western area there, eastern area should I say. Moving along towards the western coastlines here, we are going to see the growing trend of rainfall forecast around Benin and surrounding areas. This is where we're going to leave your weather for now. Stay tuned though with SABC News. This Ford
cougar thing is becoming a hot potato for them, excuse the pun.
US carmaker Ford has finally admitted that a fault is causing some of its Ford Cougar SUVs to catch fire, and it also formally issued a recall in South Africa.
Ford needs to take accountability.
We'll work with our dealers and try to come up with a way that satisfies them.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
It's the final hour here on Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendall Makamad.
Now, we're with you until 12 o'clock. Now, today we're conducting a poll. Now, in April, President Jacob Zuma signed the Anti-Money Laundering Bill, the FICA Bill, which allows increased scrutiny of bank accounts of prominent individuals and identify and deal with money laundering, terrorism financing, and other illegal activities. So we're asking you this morning on our poll this morning, Kendall.
100%. We want to find out from you. Do you think that the FICA bill will curb financial crime?
131 votes in. 53% are saying no, it won't. 47% are saying yes, it will.
Really?
But you're also tweeting us on this matter. Well, there's no tweets at this time, but we'll come back to some of them, and we'll read them a little bit later. But we're also conducting a poll on the police minister, who says that the violent protests in El Dorado Park, as well as Anadale, Coligny, and so forth, have been infiltrated by a criminal element, Kendall.
Yeah, he reckons they're no longer genuine protests, but are now more criminal activity. And that's why we're asking you that question. Do you agree with the police minister that the criminal elements have hijacked South Africa's protests?
This is what you have to say on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. Cindy says, yes, there are some criminal elements to these protests. However, the underlying issues here is the South African system that created dependency.
Mukhele DJ says, yes, I agree, but our government is too long before it's taking reaction in our community service.
It's taking too long, yeah. This one from Black or White says there is a huge difference between a protester and a criminal looting shops. You can't put them in the same boat.
Katleho reckons, I agree. I see playfulness driven by thuggery, joblessness, hunger, criminalism. I'm worried about the future of our youth destroying their legacy.
This one from Jacob says, by making sure that organizers of those protests take responsibility of the damages and looting. And that's another thing that one has got to look at in terms of taking responsibility, because it's not just all about rights. It's also responsibility to you as an individual and a citizen of this country. How proud are you of your country, and what do you do to make sure that we do not destroy it?
No, absolutely, you're right. Protest is definitely our democratic right, but responsibility goes along with those rights.
We'll come back to some of your comments in a short while, but right now let's take a look at the news. Anadale residents are reported to have started blocking roads as protests continue in the area. Meanwhile, Coligny residents and government is to meet in order to find the solutions to the racial tensions in that area. And the search for the last of the 5 lions that have escaped from the Kruger National Park resumes this morning. 4 of them slept in the park last night. So they know that. Remember that song, The Lion Sleeps Tonight? Some of them were there. There's one sleeping outside. Those are all your headlines. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening in the sports room.
Elvis, I'm happy that you curbed your enthusiasm and did not break out into the song there. It might have been a little scary for a lot of our viewers. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
In the title of the Club Super Sports United, the other one now. There's an opportunity here for another goal. McQueen has missed one and he's unselfishly finds Parler. And that's it. Done and dusted.
A resurgent Super Sport United in Cape Town City's challenge for the title with a resounding 4-2 victory.
But Sally's on the move in there. Subasic gets 2 gloves to it. Danny Elvers crashes the ball in. That will do it for Juventus once and for all.
Danny Alves stars again as he inspires a brilliant Juventus to book their tickets to the UEFA Champions League final in Cardiff with a dominant 4-1 victory over AS Monaco. And Real Madrid travel to the Vicente Calderon with a 2-0 advantage as they make a bid to become the first team to ever defend the UEFA Champions League title. Come back a little later. I've got a very interesting interview for you as well, soccer related. If you want to find out, make sure that you're here at 11:35. For now, it's back to Elvis who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Service delivery protests in Gauteng have now spread to Fine Town, south of Johannesburg, next to Anadale. A woman has been taken to hospital after she was hit by a rubber bullet. Residents have clashed with police after they barricaded the Golden Highway with burning objects. Now, we earlier crossed to our reporter Griselda Lewis and asked her to give us the latest.
These are continuing running battles that you're seeing right now between the police that have been deployed here to Fine Town and the residents as well. They've been hurling stones at police since very early this morning, and police have been retaliating. At least one person has been injured and has been taken to hospital for treatment. It's a very tense situation here this morning, as we have been reporting since this morning. The demands that this community is making is very similar to the demands that we've seen coming from the different communities in El Dorado Park as well as Anadale, and what we're seeing in Laudium also happening this morning. So these residents are saying they're going to continue with their protest action. Essentially what police are trying to do with the visuals that you're seeing right now, they're trying to prevent the residents from moving onto the Golden Highway. At least for now, cars are able to move past that particular area, but the residents have been charging towards where I am now to the Golden Highway, so police continue to push them back. And as you correctly pointed out, not too far from where I am at the moment, the residents of Anadale have also been counting the costs this morning. Several of the shops in that area have been closed, and they're basically trying to see when they'll be able to open those shops once again. I'm going to move towards this direction. You see, that's where these stones are being flung at this point, and police keep on firing some tear gas towards the area where we are. We're on the side of the community at this stage, and standing here, it's a bit safer to stand on this point, but residents continue to fling these stones. It's been happening since 3 o'clock this morning, and no schooling is taking place in this area. What we did see this morning is that in the Anadale area, there were some pupils who did try to make their way to school, but when they got there, apparently the teachers had told them that they will not be opening for the day, and they might as well turn back and go back home. So it's not just a service delivery protest and demands over adequate housing, but it's also a situation that we're seeing. There's also a situation, I'm just going to move from here. I'm just going to move from this area as the police try to move in. More tear gas as well being fired as we try to get ourselves away. As we try to get away from this area. You see there are more rubber bullets. Tear gas and stun grenades. I beg your pardon there. We're obviously trying to Gibbon, I'm not sure if you are trying to communicate that. Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about your own safety and the mood amongst the residents there. We've seen attacks on members of the media elsewhere.
Well, that's right. Since we saw these protests begin, Yurban, from the different areas that we have been visiting, the media have also really come under attack. And, I guess some would say it is the nature of the job, but we've also been relying on police. I guess, if we run into one direction, you'll find that the community is running in the same direction, and police would basically fire those rubber bullets, even if there is media there. So it's not safe at all for us to be at this point. You see the journalist that is standing right there. Just to give you a sense of what has happened since these protests started, that journalist wearing a helmet right there. Those are the scenes that you're seeing. Often when we've covered service delivery protests, would generally just go in without any protection. But what has since happened, we've seen the escalation of these protests, becoming more violent. So it is really also journalists have had to change the way that they do things. The helmets and the protective gear that most of them are also wearing at this point. You look towards that direction as well. Very similar scenes there. Our camera person, Mangoba, more helmets as well. One of the journalists there was also injured this morning. So the situation extremely tense here, continuing running battles. These residents are continuing to burn tires as well and blockading this road here near the Golden Highway. But we'll continue to bring you a whole lot more from here. At this stage, we understand that Mayor Herman Mashaba will be meeting with the Anadale community at 6 o'clock this afternoon, and perhaps then would get a sense of whether these protests will continue, because I would guess when he does address the Anadale community, he would address the broader spectrum of communities that are facing similar challenges, because all of them are related to housing, to service delivery, the alleged lack thereof, and underdevelopment. So certainly when the mayor does address the Anadale community, I think it would need to come up with solutions for the many other communities, including here in Finetown, where I am, to see how they'll be able to quell these service delivery protests, because they certainly do not seem like they're going to be letting up. There you have it again, more stones being thrown. It's basically exactly what's been taking place here this morning. But we'll try to remain as safe as we can at this point. One person injured, one was detained a bit earlier on, one of the community members, but was let go on warning as well.
That's our very brave reporter there, Griselda Lewis, putting her body on the line to bring you the latest from the hotspot in Anadale. Now, earlier, my colleague, in fact, no, it wasn't my colleague, it was me. I spoke to our reporter, Oleboheng Kotsilentwe, and we asked her, what is the latest there in Coligny? As you remember, there's also protests there.
I can tell you that the situation is calm here in Coligny this morning. We are standing at the R503 that was closed for traffic last night as we made our way back to Mahikeng. But for now, traffic is moving quite smoothly. There are no disruptions. I can tell you that last night, the representatives from the Premier's office came here to meet with the community to pave a way for a meeting that will take place again between the community and MEC for Public Safety, Dr. Mpomo Tlhabane. You remember that meeting yesterday did not end well, with the community not wanting to hear anything that the MEC had to say with them. At the core of that meeting, the MEC was pleading with the community to allow school children to go back to school, seeing as how they've already lost a lot of school time, and that we are approaching exam season come next month. So we are standing by to find out if indeed this morning the community will be willing to listen to MEC Mpomo Tlhabane. Elvis?
What about businesses in the area? Have they reopened after the protests that we've seen in the area, and of course some farmhouses being burned down?
The only business that we see operating this morning is the filling station that is on the R503 as you come from Lichtenburg into Coligny, or from Ventersdorp passing Coligny. So far, the local businesses are closed down. The tuck shops and ordinary just retailers have closed down because they fear that their businesses will be burnt as a result because they are not black people. You remember that the community seems to be targeting any business or any house or any building belonging to a person that is not black. So whether or not they are Muslim, Indian, white, Afrikaner, their businesses are in danger. So those businesses for now remain closed. Elvis?
Let's just go back to the meeting of last night. What is the outcomes from that meeting, and is everything now normalized in Coligny?
Yesterday, the representative from the Premier's office that is concerned with dealing with the reconciliation, rehabilitation and healing program came here to Coligny to meet with the white community as well as the black community to really try and find a way in which they can sit and engage and find a way forward, and even beyond these protests, to find out if they are willing to live together in harmony and with tolerance. But the black community not willing at all, Elvis, to meet the people halfway. So the meeting did not end well, but we're expecting the government officials to be here, as they did mention that they were committed to finding a solution to the impasse here in Coligny. And so they will be coming here every single day to really try and deal with the situation. We also understand that Premier Supramahuma Pelu will come here on Friday with a task team to really now get to the core of the issues and to try and help the situation here in Coligny.
Well, that was me speaking to our reporter there on the ground a little bit earlier. Now, 20 years ago, in fact 23 years ago, Nelson Mandela was inaugurated as the first democratic president of South Africa. 2 weeks earlier, more than 22 million South Africans had turned out to cast their ballots in the country's first ever multiracial parliamentary elections. An overwhelming majority chose Mandela and his party, the African National Congress, to lead the country. In his inaugural address, Madiba, who spent 27 years of his life as a political prisoner, declared that the time had come for the healing of the wounds of the past. And there he was, in his prime, Nelson Mandela. Rest in peace. Now, the search for the last of the 5 lions that escaped from the Kruger National Park is expected to resume this morning, and it's near a sugarcane plantation in Komati Poort near the Lebombo border post in Mpumalanga. 5 lions were spotted on Monday roaming around a farm in that area, and rangers from the Kruger National Park and the Mpumalanga Tourism and Parks Agency managed to capture 4 of them and return them to the Kruger National Park. However, the search for the last lion was temporarily suspended at dusk. Residents have been urged to contact the nearest police station if they do spot the lion. We'll bring you an update on that story to tell you what's the latest on that a little bit later. SADC facilitator, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, says that Lesotho will not hold the SADC mandated pre-election dialogue, but all stakeholders agree to a post-election reforms dialogue. On his one-day visit, the opposition leaders told SADC that they were concerned about the security in the run-up to and during the June 3rd snap elections.
After years of shuttle diplomacy, the faces in government have changed several times, but the monarchy remains a symbol of unity.
My visit here was to come and examine the state of preparedness of Lesotho political parties to hold elections. And my discussions with a number of stakeholders told me that indeed they are ready.
The Troika call for Lesotho to hold a multi-stakeholder dialogue before the elections was welcomed by all, including the opposition, that said it would be a good platform to ensure peaceful elections. But it seems unlikely after a day of consultations with the facilitator.
It seems impossible to hold it before the elections because the elections are within 3 weeks' time. But what is good is that nearly everyone, in fact everyone, supports that there should be a multi-party process of dialogue which will deal with issues of constitutional reform, security reforms, as well as the implementation of the SADC decisions. Now, there is broad agreement that this should take place soon after the elections.
The opposition has softened its expectations but remains concerned about security.
In the last election, something very good happened. The SADC organization and machinery kept the army in the barracks and they voted from there. This is what we request. The army must be kept out of the process.
But what we had pledged for him to go and present to the government is that we must have a leaders' conference meeting, sort of a small dialogue or a workshop where we will be tabling issues of concern like security.
Deputy President Ramaphosa says his meeting with the Prime Minister has given him the confidence that issues of security will be properly handled. He will return to Lesotho after the elections. Ntakwana Ngatani, SABC News, Maseru, Lesotho.
The Department of International Relations has summoned Kenya's High Commissioner over a travel warning on South Africa. The East African country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has issued a memo raising concerns over the increased robberies, carjacking, theft, burglary, kidnap, rape and muggings against foreigners here in South Africa. Now, the move could ignite another diplomatic row between the two countries following the standoff over visas earlier. Now, that was resolved during President Jacob Zuma's visit to Nairobi last year. South Africa's head of public diplomacy, Clayton Monyela, says that the decision on the way forward will be made soon following the meeting with the Kenyan High Commissioner. And we'll keep you posted on that story as well, relations between South Africa and Kenya. Now, today we're asking you that question. It's on the poll today that we want to focus on the new FICA bill or the amendment bill. So here it is on your screen right now. Will the new FICA bill curb financial crime in South Africa? That's the question we pose to you. 135 votes in. 20 hours to go, people. 47% are saying yes. And just over 50%, 53% are saying no, this FICA bill will not curb any financial crimes. Let's take a look at what you have to say around the issue as well. You've been sending us tweets the entire morning. Let's see if there's any tweets that is coming as yet. Let's see. Not yet. If there is, we'll continue with that because in April, President Jacob Zuma signed the anti-money laundering bill or the FICA bill, which allows increased scrutiny of the bank accounts of prominent individuals into law. Now, the country risks being kicked out of the Global Fraud Monitor, the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, if the Intelligence or Financial Intelligence Center Amendment Bill was not signed by June, and that was the cutoff date. The Progressive Professionals Forum, the PPF, said that it supports the bill's aim of combating crime, but wanted to ensure that the rights of their members were not discarded. They want the Finance Minister, Malusi Gigaba, to postpone the implementation of the Act, and if unsuccessful, they vow to take the matter to the Constitutional Court. We are very happy, we're joined by the President of the Progressive Professionals Forum, Zonele Manye, here to discuss the issues at hand. Mr. Manye, very good morning to you and welcome.
Morning to you and good morning to your viewers.
As the PPF, do you support the aims and the objectives of the new FICA bill, the amendment bill?
Without a doubt. You must remember that this amends an already existing law which we're fully supportive of. Because for us as Progressive Professionals Forum, we are anti-corruption, we are anti all of these things, money laundering, we are anti-financing of terrorism, we are anti-tax evasion. But importantly, we want to ensure that the FATF recommendations, the Financial Action Task Force Group recommendations, are not just used as a cover to do other things that are not intended. And this is our problem, that in South Africa, there's a big PR about trying to conform to international standards and all that, when in fact we do the opposite. In the FATF recommendations, one of the key things that is said there is that when countries implement these recommendations, they must do them within the constitutions of their countries, they must do them and integrate them within the existing laws. What we have in this country is the complete opposite. This is our problem. We, in fact, I'm not surprised the polls are doing the way they are, because what this law is actually going to do is actually letting criminals loose. This is what it's doing.
How so?
Let me tell you how so. It lets criminals loose because, number one, the very object of this bill, right on the object of the bill, right at the beginning, it says it wants to dissolve and abolish the Counter Money Laundering Advisory Council. Now, this is a council where the security cluster sits. Now, how do you have a bill that is supposed to be monitoring criminality, but to remove all the security people? And all you are left with is just some accountants running around between National Treasury and FICA. You're now saying these accountants must be the one that enforce the law. You remove the police, you remove NIA, you remove Defense Force, you remove all the security people. I mean, it's not making sense. So actually the country is more vulnerable now than it is before with this law. So this is our problem. We are saying that constitutionality of the country must be paramount. The constitution of this country has been very clear. Section 205, subsection 3 says that the issues of criminality must be investigated and managed and dealt with by the police, not by the FICA inspectors. In fact, it goes further. If you look at the National Intelligence Act of 1994, Act number 38, is very clear on this matter. It lists agencies that must deal with criminality. We mustn't forget that this bill is not about managing your overdraft. It's about managing criminality. Why is it that when you're managing criminality, we remove the security cluster in the game? We're now sitting with FICA inspectors, which must make a determination whether the bill says they will consider if they must take this to the police or not. Imagine, now this is where the subjectivity comes in. If it's part of your friends, you may or may not. Like, for instance, we've had now a situation where over 60 billion left the country illegally. Where was FICA when this was happening? This is what we're saying, that the strength of this bill is about ensuring that the criminality is managed by people that the Constitution is empowered to do a law enforcement, people that are trained in this matter, people that have been vetted in line with what they need to do. This is what needs to happen, not what is happening. This piece of legislation is actually making South Africans very, 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 very vulnerable. In fact, what it does, in addition, is that the FICA inspectors, now the FICA as a center, which is these accountants, all the accountants are going to do now, they look at your profile and everything, and they decide that, no, we think you're doing something wrong. And then they close your account or freeze your account. Now, what that means, because this is criminal activity, once your account is closed, it immediately means that you are a suspect in crime. Now, how can you be a suspect in crime without the law enforcement agencies, without the justice system being involved? It's just not making sense.
Now, this is the second part of your defense against the FICA bill, because previously, before the bill was passed by the president, there was the issue of warrantless searches. Now, that was resolved. So that concern that you have now, is that the one that you need to focus on in terms of or why you want the finance minister to stop the implementation of the bill?
Yes, that's
correct. The only concern?
There are three concerns. Firstly, we want the council that has got the security cluster reinstated. The bill must not abolish that. That's the first thing, because if you abolish that, it immediately means it actually offends the Constitution immediately, because it means the powers that would be done by security cluster are now going to be done by the accountants. And you're going to have financial services people, FICA and National Treasury, attempting to enforce the law, and the Constitution does not give them that mandate. That's the first thing. The second thing, which is related to this, is the issue of banks being let loose in terms of what it's called risk management policies that they must put into place. These policies which banks are now must put into place, they will decide unilaterally, all by themselves, that you, and you, in terms of my policy, I can shut your account. We are saying this is just an unfair situation. Everybody needs a bank account. If banks have to close account, the process is going to be transparent. The process must have third parties, because banks are powerful. People must be assisted to deal with banks, as it were. This unilateral power given to banks to come up with policies that can reject at will is a problem. So that's the second thing. Their risk management policies of the banks are too much one-sided. Thirdly, we have a problem. In fact, we have 4 problems. The third problem is the issue of FICA playing a law enforcement agent when, in fact, it is not listed in the National Intelligence Act of 1994. So we're saying this is absurd. How can you have a financial services institution enforcing the law? Lastly, We are saying the issue of these prominent individuals that are put is very arbitrary. It's very arbitrary. You know, internationally, they talk about PEP, politically exposed person. There's the research that has been done to say if you are this position in the public service, you are prone to or vulnerable to corruption and what have you. No problem. But in South Africa, we go beyond that. We have a new category called prominent influential persons. And your only crime is to have done a business with government of a particular transaction threshold. Once you do that, immediately you are in the loop. And immediately they can freeze your accounts at will and all that. So we're saying, where is the research that says if I've done the business with government at this threshold, therefore crime is going to erupt out of that? So we're saying that's very arbitrary. So that PIP, we have no problem with PEP. We have a problem with the PIP.
Now, the banking sector indicated earlier that there are controls for that and that there are measures for that to take care of. But in your view, does the bill, as it stands right now, really violates the personal constitutional rights of individuals within the sector?
Oh yeah, most definitely, because your many rights. One of the rights that, in fact, I see some of the very misleading posts from National Treasury where they say if you're not doing anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. No, that's not true, because your only crime again is to be a spouse or a relative or somebody that is deemed PIP. Just by mere, you could be going on with your business, not doing anything, but purely because your spouse, your daughter, your child, your husband, your friend, it's a problem. So that's the first thing. Also by association, your freedom of association is curtailed. I can mix with you not knowing that you're a PIP, and somebody can write an article that Manye was with you in some restaurant and therefore maybe there is something already. I mean, this your freedom of association. So this thing is just creating criminals out of peace-loving people.
Now, you did say that you're going to indicate to the minister, the finance minister, that he should delay the implementation of the bill, and if you fail there, that you're going to take this to the Constitutional Court. What is the legal argument there, though?
The legal argument is that this bill is unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional for the reasons stated, that it seeks to be a law enforcement tool when, in fact, the Constitution does not give it power to do so. So it is inconsistent with Section 205, subsection 3 of the Constitution. It continues again to be inconsistent with other laws that have already been given powers to do this, as I said in the National Intelligence Act. So this bill is totally unconstitutional.
Mr. Manye, I thank you so much for your time and coming to explain to us the FICA bill from the Progressive Professionals Forum's perspective. That's Zwanele Manye here in studio. But right now, we need to go to Parliament. The acting board CEO is sitting right now in Parliament of the SABC. Let's just go there to Parliament to see who is speaking to us right now. In fact, it seems like we're not going there. In fact, no, we're going there. They say that Batabile Dlamini is now currently sitting and speaking to the board. Let's go there live.
We must be given a benefit of the doubt. People must not say on the 31st, send out messages that are saying you are not going to be paid. And then after people are paid, have messages saying we fought for you to be paid. And also change the goalpost now and go and raise a number of issues that have nothing to do with the interests of the beneficiaries as well as the taxpayers' money. So that's one issue that we also think we should raise. Let's go and look into the turnaround strategy of Home Affairs. Let's go and look at committees that were employed by SARS and were extended, their life was extended even without consulting with the National Assembly. And that committee was even appointed without proper processes. So we should be balanced in the way we do things. The defense review, how much is the defense review? NHI, how much is the NHI? So let's be balanced, have a broad view of what is a challenge right now, and also be able to measure people through their performance, not through the hearsay we pick up on a daily basis in the streets. Yes, I am disappointed by the judgment, yesterday's judgment, because we've been fighting about this for a long time. We fought about the space, the radius, where the Mashonisas should be or should not occupy at the pension payout points. And you must know who goes to the pension payout point. It's an ordinary South African who can't go to the bank. And in the banks, there are no Mashonisas around there, because people go in there and get their money. People that are milked are our ordinary people from the rural areas, informal settlements, and townships. And therefore, that is why we thought our fight was a dignified fight. We've also been to the National Credit Regulator, fighting the same thing. We were also disappointed because we lost the case there with the National Credit Regulator. And from the word go, we had thought that the whole thing was going to be easy. But we have learned a lesson that you need to read carefully your agreement and not take things for granted. But we must also say that when we saw that happening, we started looking into how it came into effect. And when we started dealing with the matter, the official that had written a letter to all regions telling them that you can use the card to buy other things resigned from work. Not that we've been sitting and not doing anything about the whole thing. Yes, we're going to work with everyone as long as they meet our requirements. Everyone who meets the requirements, we will work with. Everyone who agrees that this program should be people-centered, it must go where our people are, because they are the ones that are grant recipients, we are going to work with. Yes, cooperatives, we are going to work with. And we are going to train our young people in entrepreneurial skills, working together with small business, economic development, and local government, agriculture, rural development. We are also going to be working with the Post Bank, and there we need to have a full understanding of what the post office has, so that also we don't give them the work they will not be able to deliver. State institutions, we're all going to work with those that have what we want. CSIR, through science and technology. Home Affairs, we are going to work with. SETA, we are working with them. So the names of grant beneficiaries are with the SETA, what we call the soft pen. But MPs must understand that we are one of a few departments that are working with SETA. So we must also understand why other departments are no longer working with the SETA. We are going to need the SETA because there is information that cannot be approved through Home Affairs, because they only take information or have information about or biometrics of adults. And therefore you are going to need a vehicle that is going to be able to check children, but also we have a lot of information that we have to store. So we're not going to start from scratch. There are many areas in the government that store information. So we are going to be working with them. The judgment is very clear. Firstly, on all pay judgment, it was said that no one must use state information for other things. If you are requested to register people, you are not allowed to take that information and use it for other things. But also the judgment is very clear that there must be migration of data from CPS as well as biometrics from CPS. And we assist with that process. I think those are the issues I wanted to raise, Chairperson, and then I will come back when the officials finish responding.
Thank you, Ms. Bata. But what is important is that before you, CEO, can I allow members to ask questions directly from the Minister? Because the Minister has covered many things, including some of the questions you wanted to ask, so that when we go to the officials, they also deal with the issue of the APPs. Because clearly there is an inextricable link between the court judgment, compliance requirements, because they will be included as part of APP. So can I allow that? Or I don't know whether you agree or you want to be on the floor immediately, Honorable.
No, Chairperson, I agree with you, but also I wanted to ask follow-up questions to the Minister, so my hand was up for both.
Both, yes.
Okay.
I will be acknowledging hands to ask questions directly, whether the Minister has pronounced on that or not, because the Minister knows that.
No, Chairperson, thank you very much. And I appreciate the answers the Honourable Minister has provided us with. I wanted to see clarity because in her explanation, I did hear her saying that the cost process will be 6 billion, it's an investment, but I also heard her saying that it's going to be a 5-year process. So I needed to get clarity in terms of the 5-year process. Are we then saying that there will still be a CPS after this 1-year process? Because she said the phasing out. So I need clarity in terms of, are we sure that by 31 March, there'll be no more CPS and we will continue with the post office and an open banking architecture structure to pay out grants? Or are we envisaging a process which will still include CPS past this court deadline? Because she did speak about a 5-year process. And I want to go back to the issue of the illegal deductions. If one looks at the contract we have with CPS and Net1, the original contract that this department signed, there is a clause in there which allows them to get the information of our beneficiaries, and it allows them to share that information. So I want us to, it's fine for us now to say, with the benefit of hindsight, we've made a mistake, we've left vulnerable citizens very vulnerable because most of them get a grant, and then eventually when they get to go fetch the money, there's nothing left because it's been taken through funeral policies or things that they didn't take, whether it's airtime or whether it's electricity. But surely somebody must be held accountable. Somebody looked at that contract, saw a clause there saying it is legal for CPS and Net1 to share our beneficiary information. And I think now that the court has ruled that the status quo can continue, it's a sad state of affairs, but surely somebody must be held responsible, because as we sit now, our beneficiaries are still being subjected to illegal deductions, and there's no recourse. Yesterday, figures were cited between April 2016 and February 2017, 95,000 disputes were lodged with the department, but only 10,000 were resolved, and 50,000 cases are still not resolved because there's no affidavits. They don't have access to formulating affidavits. And also, when we spoke about this issue last year in the Portfolio Committee, we were assured by SASSA that people don't have to go to the police station to file an affidavit. They can do so in the SASSA offices. So what has happened with that? Because the fact of the matter is, people cannot. The other day I went to the police station because I needed to lodge a normal case. It took me 6 hours sitting there in the queue to be able to do an affidavit. I don't think a pensioner or somebody with a disability can be expected to sit for 6 hours in a queue in any police station. And when we raised this last year, well, we've been raising it for many years, but the fact of the matter is somebody must take responsibility for signing that clause that allowed CPS and Net1 to get away with murder in the first place. We cannot just now sit here and say we're folding hands because there's nothing we can do. Surely, and what is the engagement with CPS and Net1? Because at the end of the day, like I said before, we cannot allow this situation to continue. The court has now ruled. What is our plan?
Before, Minister, you can respond, I acknowledge the two hands. I think, Honorable van der Merwe, the presentation has not sought, the presentation by SASSA, by the Minister, to avert or do some non-compliance. So the issue, the question of whether there will be CPA or not, does not arise within the period where there's court instruction. It's going to be obeyed. We are not going to ask that question because that's what we should be saying as this committee. It's clear that the presentation does not seek to do non-compliance. However, it further says, post everything, there's transformation that must take place, which has been the idea that Honorable Masango spoke about, that before there was always a process, and the process was interrupted because there were issues. Then
So people with prosthesis can live normal life.
Prosthesis actually manufactures the artificial limbs.
I can pick up stuff. My friends think it's awesome. I like my railway.
I can walk normally. There's nothing that I can do. It changed my life from the beginning to where I am now.
Dystrophic dysplasia is a type of dwarfism that affected all my major limbs.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news.
Rights and Recourse tackles constitutional issues.
When South Africa became a constitutional democracy, we had a fairly sound legal system in place requiring the Constitution to guide the direction in which it must go and the way in which it must be refashioned.
The Justice Ministry, the custodian of human rights.
We actually have a plan to come up with a comprehensive review of our human rights instrument.
Advocates dealing with evidence.
Sometimes you have to use a crook to catch a crook. So we expected that the credibility would really be taken to task. You try and consult your witnesses and prepare them as best as you can.
Hashtag Rights with Dumila Mates on legal issues every Sunday at 2 o'clock Central African Time.